Brandon versus Trump debate. Russian offensive on Kharkiv. Aid limits on aid restrictions in Gaza worsen crisis. Mike Cohen gets grilled. I'm back in LA. Get in now. Bro, you got the broccoli hair? Listen, I washed my hair and I didn't have my product, so give me a break. That's why my hair looks the way it does right now. I didn't like do. This is what happens when I don't do my hair and I just like wash it. Stop going on Discord. It's worse than Twitter. All your stupidest cancellations come from you venting there. Like it isn't stock 24/7. Yeah, but I'm just like I'm memeing in there. I'm not even venting in there at all. I'm just like fucking around. So I don't really give a shit. Also, I don't really get canceled. It's just people will be like, "Oh, we saw a thing that he said in his Discord. It means he must be like interested in killing himself or something." Anyway, what do you use? I need better products. I don't have any good products for you, I promise. All right, let's get it going. Let's get it twisted. Let's get it blasted. Wait, what the freak? What the freak? Where are these downloads going to? Okay. You look like if Egon Spengler from Ghostbusters was Turkish. Recommend a face cream with SPF? Dude, I don't even use that. Like, I only recently started using that. Anyway. Gatekeeper fake commented, tell me your hair care routine. I don't have a hair care routine. I literally just simply do not wash my hair with shampoo and conditioner outside of like once a week or sometimes twice a week, depending on if it gets like, if it gets dirty. That's it. I don't put anything in my hair. My hair is like naturally very dry. So I just try to like wait it out so it looks a little bit healthier. And then it's only with water. I only wash my hair with water for the most part, for the duration of the week. Ghost of Tsushima out on PC now? Hell yeah. Stop washing your hair every shower. No, I rinse every day, sometimes twice a day. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm simply stating that I do not wash my hair with a shampoo and conditioner every day. I think that's too much. And that's just for me though, because everyone's hair is different, right? Like some people get dandruff, some people have really greasy hair. They get really greasy quickly. My issue is that my hair is very dry. I'm very fortunate because I don't get dandruff or anything like that, but I do have very dry hair. So if I wash it every day, which I used to, like for all my life, I washed it every fucking day. I didn't even use conditioner, as a matter of fact. It would be like really dry and like really frizzy, and I wouldn't understand why it was like that. And then I realized like, oh, it's because I'm just washing it every day. My doctor said just rinsing it with water causes dandruff. Yeah. Do you even wet it during those days? No, of course I wet it, man. What the fuck? I think it would be weird if I didn't like wet my hair every day. I will say that much, because I feel like if I sweat, which I do every day because I work out every day, I have to wet it. Like I have to like at least get the sweat off. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't do that. I'm not there. I can't do that. I can't justify that. Everybody's hair is different in general. But for me, are you having a Fuseli moment? No, not at all. I shower every fucking day, sometimes twice a day. I shower after I sweat every single time. However, if you are asking me directly about hair care, I get my hair wet every single day. I rinse my hair every single day. I do not, however, use shampoo and conditioner every single day. I think that's too much, and it's not good for my hair. We know how it is, little bro. The Hassan Housecourt cycle. Hassan laughs off Housecourt from Hassan gets into a Twitter controversy. Hassan runs a Housecourt event and farm dank hugs. No, because I never get fucking dank hugs from Housecourt. Housecourt thinks it's like super cool to just be annoying. You wash your body with soap every day? Of course, dude. Greasy hair freak here. I cannot go 24 hours without washing my hair because it looks like I just finished running. Yeah, that shit sucks. I feel for you. Did you watch the new AC trailer? I did, and I'm very excited about this Assassin's Creed. I really hope that it doesn't have that same like UB bloat that that is heavily featured in every single game, because I'm really excited about like the environment, the story, everything else. So we shall see. Is the people clowning on your hygiene that don't even use a bidet? No, I'm very, very, very hygienic. So Yeah, the right-wing gamers are very mad because it has like a real historical black figure in the game. So it's pretty funny that they're upset about that. Hasanabi karizma eyvallah Mete. Yeah, they're mad that it's like gamers when it's a historical white figure in a period piece in Japan, they love that shit. Okay, they're pogging their fucking face off. They love that shit. Gamers when the historical figure is actually black, oh my god, this is so racist and unimaginably anti-Japanese. I hate it. Africa was invented in 1973 to spread wokeness. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be a historic white figure. It can be it can be just a white figure at all. They love that shit. Anyway, we'll do the Brandon versus Trump stuff because I didn't even realize that like a lot of liberals were upset at me and were offended by a lot of the things that I was saying. Not recognizing that like a lot of the things that I've been saying and have been saying are things that I've consistently said over the course of the past couple of election cycles, over the course of the past 8 years now, but even longer than that. I have always been an advocate for the Democratic Party to turn around and actually try to win votes. Okay. And I also have been an honest person and that and have maintained the position that I am not going to sit around and lie to people to go and vote for one person or another, especially if I don't feel it in my heart that it is the right thing to do. And as I say that, I have told people to go out and vote for Joe Biden. I've told people to go out and vote for Hillary Clinton, as a matter of fact. So having said that, however, I mean, the overarching attitude that I've always had about voting has not changed. Okay, voting is good. You should always vote down ballot. It is the least important, most important thing you can do. Okay, it is not the end all be all. It is not just simply the only part of your civic duties. You certainly do have to, engage in community organizing, activism of sorts, and apply pressure beyond voting if you want anything to happen. However, having said that, this does not mean that the Democratic Party can take your votes for granted. They can't. They mustn't. And honestly, it is precisely the reason why the Democratic Party is in a dire situation right now, as the Republican Party is like openly advocating to take more and more of your civil liberties away. Okay, it's craziness. Voting for the school board was how anti-trans evangelicals pass all these anti-queer rules in public libraries and schools. Yeah, like local officials, local representatives that you vote for, like state representatives that you vote for, can literally mean life or death for like trans people. You can have like one pro-trans like state rep that will literally put her body on the line as it has happened in the past, and that will unironically stop like insane legislation from passing, right? So I'm not going to sit here and act like that stuff's not significant. Of course it is. And I'm not going to tell you that like there is no daylight between Donald Trump and Joe Biden on some issues. It is just unconscionable to me that like a lot of the major issues that we were told were really important. If you don't vote for fucking Biden, then like, we're going to do the Mexican melting machine. Donald Trump's going to fucking melt every Latino person. And then when Joe Biden is like, no, Jack, I'm the one who knocks. I'm the one who's going to kill all the Mexicans myself. 4 years later, it's like, we just dropped that. Like, oh, okay. So it wasn't significant 4 years ago to you. It was significant to me 4 years ago. Right. You can't constantly fucking go lesser evil voting only as a way to get yourself to be more evil. Like this does not give you more permission to be more evil. That's not how people operate either. You know what I mean? That's not how people operate at all. Yes, I did see that Elon Papa got detained. I heard. Ultimately, though, if you want to vote for Brandon, go ahead. You know what I mean? I will tell you never to vote for Donald Trump, of course. That is fucking ridiculous. And plenty of people will come in here and be like, well, what about Trump? This. Like, Trump would be better on this issue, that issue. That's not true. He will not. So all that stuff's ridiculous. Obviously, if you're an RFK Jr. voter, that's hilarious in and of itself. We literally are at this impasse because of lesser two evils voting. Yeah, exactly. All the time, constantly. But yeah, so we did a podcast. I don't know what the podcast looks like. Like, I don't know what they cut out, what they kept in. But this was, I would say this was like the only point of contention of the podcast, because like both of the journalists, who were wonderful people, by the way, former Vice, former Vox, you know, a part of that like circuit, they were kind of shocked about what I said about like my advocacy for unconfirmed or like not voting for Joe Biden in the primaries, at least. And we talked about how scary that is. And I did what I always do and try to explain to people that like it is scary, and that they should be scared, and that they should at the very least try to message, like make a calculation internally and try to offer a good faith initiative to say like, no, we do care about young voters. Like, please vote for us. Like, here's what we're doing. Right. The podcast was really calm. You sounded great. Yeah, because they were great. They were wonderful people. The left's favorite political two-streamer, Hassan Piker, doesn't know if he's voting for President Joe Biden. Doesn't care if you do either. Nearly every day, Parker streams on Twitch for around 8 hours. It was more than 2.6 million followers on the platform. He's not a household name by any means, but he's become one of the most influential political commentators for Gen Z and young millennial audiences online over the past 4 years. 3 years ago, he hosted Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on his Twitch stream to play Among Us and urged his audience to go out and vote. So it matters if he doesn't support Biden. Let's talk about it. Hassan has never been the biggest Biden fan, so his disregard for the top of this year's ticket is not much of a surprise. But on the Wired Politics Lab podcast this week, when Leah Feiger, our host and my editor, asked Piker about it, he said he wouldn't support any candidates this year before ultimately replying, I don't know if I'll be voting for Biden. I'll be honest. If you think that lesser evil voting is working for you, if it makes you feel better, go ahead, he told us. One thing he definitely backs is voting uncommitted. I'm an advocate for full-blown pressure, he said. Biden shouldn't expect any of the little support Piker offered last time around. I urged and lent support to Joe Biden in the last election. There were a lot of promises that he made in the last election on domestic policy, codifying Roe v. Wade, protecting abortion rights, and immigration. He was going to basically reverse everything that Donald Trump had done, and he did none of that. Biden's administration has actually had a lot of successes, but even when Biden secures significant funding for a project or a campaign promise, his team has never been good at relaying that to voters. This is actually something I admitted as well. We had this conversation as well. I don't know if they kept that in the podcast or not, but I said what I always say, which is I like how progressive the Biden administration is when it comes to the NLRB, when it comes to its agencies. You got the FTC, you got the NLRB, you got like the SEC. These guys are all actually legitimately doing work, whereas like under the Trump administration, they would not be. Trump very openly advocates and successfully will like maybe not abolish these institutions, but who knows in the second time around, but at least like he will reduce them deliberately. Like he won't fulfill cabinet roles and things like that on purpose, right? Like, so that is a major issue, right? So that is definitely something to consider. But that gets at the communication of it all. And Hassan also touched on something pertinent that voting seems to be talking about this week, the youth vote. On the pod, Piker explains his where was it? His team has never been good about relaying that to voters. Even Biden's TikTok is barely about Biden. It mostly bashes Trump rather than communicating the president's accomplishments, which is ironically what Hillary Clinton did as well. On the pod, Piker explains his and his young audience's disenchantment with Biden and their sense that the president has walked back many of the promises he made to them in the last cycle. If I'm young, I don't see anyone right now that is captivating me, Piker told us. Pollsters and strategists like to make the case that Biden won the last election in part to the young voters that turned out to him, but over the past few months, polling has suggested that their support is wavering. A new set of New York Times CNN polls out this week also claim that in every battleground state except Wisconsin, Biden is polling behind former President Donald Trump. And the youth vote could be a large reason why. Streamers like Parker are arguably some of the most influential creators on the internet, and there's no doubt that they could have a real impact on 2024. Earlier this week, I spoke to Samuel Jasmala, the founder of Progressive Victory, a liberal group that works for streamers streamers on Get Out the Vote initiatives. Told me that Twitch's format allows for the kinds of back and forth that can change a person's mind. Definitely think Hassan is a decent representation of young voters this time around. I mean, guys, the young voter percentage, like the young voter participation rate barely fucking hits 30%. And when it does, it was under Obama, and they brought it up on the podcast as well. Like that was seen as an impressive feat. Like think about that, 30%. So young people don't vote for a multitude of different structural hurdles, something that I also mentioned on the podcast. And those are areas that we have to solve, like universal ballot registration and things of that nature that like ease access to voting for everyone. Yeah, Progressive Victory is actually Brianna Wu's, or formerly, I think Brianna Wu was there. I don't know if she's still there or not. But anyway, he told me that Twitter's format allows for the kind of back and forth to change a person's mind. Long-form discussions allow for a lot of nuance and detail to be discussed and creates a greater understanding. Like, these people are educating their audiences when they choose to speak on issues. Progressive Victory's approach to moving online activism into IRL has proven successful. In a recent Ohio canvassing event, the group was able to bring together 20 streamers and 300 volunteers and knock on 40,000 doors for the state's progressives. They built communities around their personalities and the way they speak to their audiences, Jasmala said. The live nature allows for creators to make really compelling asks to their audiences, can get people to take crazy amounts of action. Unlike Drosmala's group, Piker focuses more on issues advocacy than electoral politics, though he will sometimes encourage followers to vote in down ballot elections. His largest priorities are the causes he cares about. I think my impact is way more important when it comes to Chipotle unionizing Lansing, Michigan. I went to the UCLA encampment, and all the SJP and JVP students I met were like, I'm here because I started watching you in 2020 and really broadened my horizons, Piker told us. That impact won't be reaching the Biden campaign anytime soon. The Biden campaign declined to comment on what Hassan said about voting, but it has made, dude, that is so funny to ask the Biden campaign what they think, what they have to say about my statement on voting. It's like, I doubt that they care. And why should they, really? I mean, they shouldn't. I am insignificant in the grand scheme of things, right? But it's made significant investments in his relationships with supportive influencers, and we've talked about them multiple times in this newsletter. But is a video with Luke Skywalker more effective than deeply engaged online communities? I guess we'll find out. On Monday, I spoke with Erin Hattemer, a comedian on TikTok with more than 1.6 million followers. For the past 2 weeks, she has spearheaded a program called Pass the Hat, pairing creators with herself with families in Gaza to raise money for them either to evacuate, pay medical bills, or rebuild their lives. The grassroots operation Olive Branch finds and verifies the families in need, and as of this week, Hattemer has matched more than 700 Palestinian families with online creators. Once a creator is paired with a family, the creator will continue to post about them and their GoFundMes until their goal is reached. I'm working all day. I'll take breaks, but I'm working on emails. I do a lot of coaxing creators, Hattemer told me over the phone. Evacuation is just the first step. The infrastructure, what? But they have people like David Pakman at the White House, so they should care more about you. No, of course they're going to have someone like David Pakman at the White House. David Pakman is the perfect independent content creator he's very safe. Like, David Pakman is, and I'm not even like saying this as a diss, mind you. Okay. Like, I've known David for many, many years. He has always been a very cordial person. And especially when it comes to like the State Department line, he oftentimes does not stray away from, what, like, on American foreign policy, there's not a lot of disagreement with David Pakman and, like, you know, those in positions of power. So I think that that's like a major difference. And there's I have no issues with David. You know, he can have his own opinions. I think that he is very respectful, and I appreciate that. He's very cordial, and I appreciate that. We do definitely have a lot of severe disagreements when it comes to American foreign policy. But beyond that, I think that we're like, beyond that, when it comes to domestic issues and stuff, like David Pakman and I are fairly aligned, I would say. Like I said, I've known him for many, many years. But ultimately, David fell off as far as Israel. Yeah, I mean, he's certainly had, I don't know. I can't speak on his like latest opinions on it. But yeah, he is definitely had more of a defensive posture when it comes to Israel. That is definitely one of our disagreements, or was one of our disagreements, for sure. I don't know what his like latest opinions are. I'm talking like many, many years ago. So, in any case, but like, he's the type of person who, regardless of his own personal opinions on Israel, I don't think will like go nutty mode and like be like a racist piece of shit when it comes to like talking about Muslims and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he's like, he's never on that tip, if you know what I mean. Like, I think that he, defends Israel? Yes, I do. But I don't think he's like, no, he's not like MSNBC. I think that's too far. I think that is too far. I think he tries to manage this as best as he can and like stay silent on a lot of the aspects of what has happened thus far, instead of instead of like jumping on the fucking Joe Scarborough train. Like, come on, guys. At most, you could say he's like very quiet, and that's deliberate. Anyway, this is not about David Pakman. What the fuck are we talking about David Pakman? Jesus Christ. Okay. But I do understand, like I said, I do understand why the White House would want someone like him, because he's not like a progressive content creator. He's not a progressive content creator who's gonna like go out and debate like CP. You know what I mean? He doesn't do dumb shit like that. He doesn't fucking go out and like talk to or even hang out with Nazis. Like he'll debate Nazis every now and then, but it's like very limited in capacity. It's like he's in and out. He's gonna fucking have a couple like he's gonna have a couple lines. He's there to like he's there to destroy them, I guess, quote unquote, in the marketplace of ideas, but he's not there to like befriend them. You know what I mean? He's not gonna like eat chicken and waffles with fucking Nazis. He's not gonna like invite Nazis to his home and you know, and do shit like that. Anyway, we need people like David on our side. He was mainstream appeal. He's good at delivering his message. Yeah, I mean, foreign policy, I don't think David and I are on the same side. I will admit that. But anyway, but hey, Sean the Black, thank you for the raid. Hope you had a good stream. Anyway, for months now, TikTok users have been demanding that their favorite creators speak out on Palestine in the past few days. I've seen far more creators speaking out on the conflict than before, and I bet it's largely due to Hadamer pestering them. This gets to the question of whether influencers platforms should be required to speak out on political injustices. We saw this at a large-scale George Floyd protest in 2020. What do you think? So that's the article accompanying the actual podcast. I hope that because they filmed it, so I think that it'll be on there as well. But something that I said yesterday about not having a lot of daylight between like Donald Trump and Joe Biden on certain key issues that Joe Biden actually ran on is something that I will stand on. Okay. I listened to it on Spotify. It was really good. Hell yeah. Yeah, a lot of liberals got mad at me for this one, I guess. I, for one, I'm excited to watch two 80-year-old men yap about a bunch of issues they almost completely align on with respect to policy while acting as though they are miles apart from one another. This, for the record, this was deliberate. Like, this was definitely bait. I will admit that. Like, I stand on this, especially on certain issues, as I clarify later down the line. Immigration, Israel, Palestine, and tariffs are out on that front. The key focus has to be on abortion. As in, I do recognize that there are issues that you know, the Brandon camp and the Trump camp do not agree on. However, and union and environment, sure, fair. Trump is much worse than Joe Biden on everything. But remember, the fundamentals that you have to remember is that there is a reason why things just get progressively worse and worse year over year, what we like to call the ratchet effect. You know what I mean? In the past, you had 1 minute of ads at the top of the hour. Now you have 3 minutes of ads at the top of the hour. Luckily, the subscription price to avoid said ads have not changed, so there is that. It's still $5 or for free with a Twitch Prime. If you no longer want to see those ads at the top of the hour, here's a 3-minute ad break now, by the way. The 6 cuts in a 15-second video bodes well for a 2-hour live debate. It's not going to, I mean, yeah. DJ Kento, thank you for the 5 community gifted subs. But yeah, here's a 15-second video that he released. We'll watch that real quick, and then I'll tell you guys my points. FTC, SEC, NLRB, and IRA are his biggest W's and trains. Had he not been a genocidal senile maniac, I would have sucked it up and voted for him. Yeah, we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the genuine similarities within Biden's point of view and perspective to the Trump administration, leading to basically what I like to call, I mean, what a lot of people call the ratchet effect, but what I like to call, you know, if you vote for the Democrat, he'll push for the same policies 4 years later. So you're basically voting for someone to extend, like, hold off on the same awful, violent right-wing policies by 4 years. Anyway, yeah, I've seen that video. It's funny. We'll cover that. We'll cover Assassin's Creed as well. But let's get started on this one real quick.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate. Now he's acting like he wants to debate me again. Well, make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice. So let's pick the dates, Donald. I hear you're free on Wednesdays.
Yeah, the fact that they cut this out, like chopped it up so much is crazy, but whatever. This is such a reductionist, inaccurate portrayal of the vast difference between the two. Leftists always do this. Neither person is a communist that will destroy the system, so they are the same. No, man. You don't have to be a fucking communist to be like, hey, you told me to vote for this fucking guy because he's not going to melt immigrants. Now he's telling me he wants to melt immigrants like, you know, just like the other guy is. I feel like that's pretty important. When I first heard you say the 4-year delay thing, my mind was blown. Yeah. Back in the day, voting for the Democrats meant that like some of the policies at the very least would change. Okay? There would be some reversal, not much, marginal, right? Or at the very least, it would like slow down the creep towards fascism, right? Nowadays, however, it's basically, hey, vote for us, and then 4 years later, we will advocate for the same exact fucking bullshit that we voted against. And that's crazy to me. Okay? The fringe far left, the other side of the horseshoe. There's no media literacy anymore, just saying wildly inaccurate things and going viral. Is it crowded in your closet? You should exit it. Well, what are your options, Hassan? Will you enjoy yourself in Istanbul, Turkey? Your input is not needed, nor is it important. Yeah. My favorite is Democrats literally being like, if you don't love it, leave. If you don't love it, leave, you fucking piece of shit, you Muslim ass scumbag. Fuck you. It's like, all right, man, thanks. What is this? Excited for you to go on stream and act as though there's a huge difference between you and a racist? Wait, what? What does that even mean? I don't even understand what this means, but I'm sure that has something. I'm sure something's going on there. Anyway, banger Michael Harriot thread on the far right worth a read for the uneducated in the chat. You really hurt people's feelings. It's insane. I don't know. I think the Biden admin messaging is more along the lines of vote for us and stop us to stop milking immigrants. And then 2 years later, it's unfortunately it's not within our power to stop milking immigrants. We're actually doing it more, and I don't know how we can stop this. More C-word obsessed D fans. Oh yeah, yeah. That part. Look, I have one final statement on this. Okay. Look, if you're a fan of Divorcelli, I don't know what to tell you, man. Your guy's saying the N-word out here openly. If you find yourself fucking posturing that like, well, he's actually saying it to a person who is not black and he's saying with a soft A and that's actually not racist, while simultaneously turning around and being like, yeah, the term cracker actually holds a lot more weight regardless of the fact that there is no systematic violence associated with that sort of thing. In the same way that there is systemic violence associated with the N-word. And without actual historical wrongs, you know, it's just a mean word. It's just a bad word. It's a word that hurts your feelings, like, which is kind of crazy, especially considering, you know, what is this? It finally happened. He died. Yeah. Ultimately, I mean, you're defending a dude who is like saying the N-word openly to try to be edgy, to be like, hey, look, I can say it and, you know, my fans will fucking defend it. You are duped into taking a position that I don't think you would believe, all things considered. Maybe some of you do, but I don't think all of you actually legitimately believe that. You're just a part of an in-group, I think, at that point. Does that make sense? A Canadian streamer defended it as well while you were away yesterday. Yeah, I think it's weird. Like, I don't know what else to say about it other than I think it's fucking weird to make this your political cause. You know what I mean? X quadrupled down defending saying the N-word because of a soft day only to get owned by his chat. Yeah, it's odd. Like, I don't know if people are like genuinely holding on to this. I don't know if people genuinely believe this or if they're just like trying to defend a person that they like against a person that they don't like. You know what I mean? Like, I think people should be more honest about this shit. They should be like, I don't really care because I like this person. And I do care on the other hand because I don't like this person. I feel like that would be more productive in general. X definitely says it privately. No, he does not. No, that's ridiculous. And this isn't me like defending XQC at all. I just know that he does not. Unless it is like, unless something is like severely changed, and I highly doubt it. No, he does not. You can say fucking sure all day. I'm not defending him at all. I'm actually criticizing him for taking an idiotic stance in this circumstance because he likes Destiny and me not so much. But yeah. No, I don't think he's like, I don't think that's a thing that he would say. Also, it's definitely not a thing he would say because as far as I understand, even in the process of him being like, well, it's just not as bad. It's just not as bad. He still, but you criticize him with baby gloves on? No, you just want me to be more aggressive for drama purposes. But what can I say to a dude who literally spent multiple days complaining about Cracker being like racist and then turned around and did not have even a margin of the smoke for the N-word because of the intent behind using it? It's not that bad. It's like, no, the severity of the N-word is much worse. It's much, much, much worse. It's ridiculous. It's not even in the same fucking orbit. That's why you can say Cracker, but you can't say the N-word, right? I don't know why people openly and willingly demonstrate cognitive biases in this situation where they try to, like, we went from, I just don't like any racism, please, including saying the C word, including saying cracker, to actually the N-word in certain contexts are perfectly permissible, whereas the term cracker when directed against a white person is racist. How do we arrive at a situation where, well, I guess I was technically correct. We didn't arrive at the situation. The entire discourse surrounding the term cracker and how fucking inappropriate it is the same animosity that a lot of people feel because white boys feel restricted in saying the N-word in general. So they find this person to be a hero for them. And that's it. Wonderful stuff. I can't believe I had to make this argument in person. Very awkward. I think you also alienate a lot of people. Brother, Jay Miles, my lovely, wonderful friend, what would you say to this, in your opinion? Like just popping off with the N-word. Do you think that alienates more people? Do you think saying the N-word alienates more people or saying cracker alienates more people? Do you think there is a higher percentage of white people that are genuinely seriously offended by the term cracker? Myself included, I am white too. I'm not offended. Than the number of people, both white and black, and every other race, as a matter of fact, that immediately recognizes who you are when you are a white person saying the N-word. The reason why I think both do, but I think saying one with a bunch of hate feels different. Call me. So you are on the same camp. You are saying that calling a white person a cracker or saying they're engaging in cracker-ass behavior is worse than a white guy saying the N-word. Kind of weird that X went so hard to stop the use of the F slur, but when turns around and it's on tiny side with the N-word, depending on the situation, yeah. I don't think there's any situation where that works. And I'm glad that you brought this up because this demonstrates a flaw in the argument, a flaw that I've been trying to get you to understand for the past couple of days. Okay? And the flaw is this. Are you ready for it? When people talk about racism, they're not talking about like individual acts that hurt people's feelings. Okay? They're talking about systemic racism and the violence associated with it, the historical violence associated with it. And without historical violence associated with it, okay, someone saying you're a cracker because there is no valid, real anti-white, especially in the Western world, especially in the United States of America, there's no real valid anti-white systematic violence that has ever occurred on the boundaries of being white, because of course white people have been fucked over a shit ton of times, except if they were Irish, Polish, Jewish. It was not on the virtues of being white. It was actually because they were considered not white at the time. Or across the board, they have been destroyed systematically from the framework of class as working class citizens, right? Having said that, however, the flattening of racism that you engage with right here is the major problem. This is why I keep talking about this over and over again, and I hope that people will understand why I do it. The reason why I do it is because Interpersonal racism and systematic racism are not to the same severity, because without systematic racism, what you are doing when you call a white person a cracker is no different than calling a white lady a Karen or calling a white person a hick or a redneck. Okay? You understand? It's like me calling you dumb or stupid. It's mean. It's fucked up. You know, it's not nice. It might even make you feel bad. Okay? But when you add that onto the category of something that is colloquially understood as racism, a hate crime, something that is like genuinely much, much worse than all of those things, of course they are not to the same severity, but to say one just does not exist is just ignorant, that is just the issue. No, you are misunderstanding me. The way I analyze these sorts of issues is within the framework of how much damage, regardless of intent, how much damage is being caused across the board. This is precisely the reason why I brought up numerous times issues that you did not address for some reason, like anti-het violence or heterophobia, right? Go to a gay bar and they're like, ugh, that's a breeder. If you consider that to be unconscionable, if you consider that to be like a genuine act of vitriol and violence, you are ridiculous. People will laugh at you, right? Because there is no real historical form of violence conducted upon cisgender heterosexual people on the virtue of their gender identity or their sexual status. We live in a cis heteronormative society. It is the in-group. It is the power group. You mean there is no legit systematic racism for white people, but you can have racist feelings for white people? Yes. Except a lot of those racist feelings, okay, can in many instances be born out of the defense mechanism, born out of the white supremacy that they experience if they're POC. And if it's white people, it's just like people fucking around. So I think it's like hilarious to get mad at white people for calling other white people crackers, or even saying that, not even calling them crackers directly, but saying like that's a cracker ass take, which is just a substitute for privilege, is what the overarching statement was. Okay. The reason why you have to arrive at a hypothetical here when you go, can a black person be racist in Vietnam where there is a lack of systematic oppression to people there? The reason why you had to travel to an entirely different place for this hypothetical is because you know you can't win this conversation in the United States of America. Okay? It's an idiotic hypothetical to entertain in this circumstance, because we're having this conversation about white supremacy in the Western world. And the reason why you have to deeply change the dynamic to a situation where the dominant in-group would be the Vietnamese population, which was, of course, subject to colonial violence for many, many years and were victims of genocidal actions of the American state. So that's a whole different can of worms, ultimately. Racism exists outside the USA, yes, but we're having a conversation about the Western world and specifically white supremacy in the United States of America, okay? There are a multitude of different kinds of violence, multitude of different kinds of horrible shit that happens on a daily basis, okay? It is a ridiculous thing to say, hey, man, we should get health care in the United States of America. And you turn around and say, well, they're doing genital mutilation to women in different African nations. What are we going to do about that? It's like, well, that's a whole different conversation that we're having now. Okay. Yeah, people in Rwanda don't have access to health care. It's like, okay, thank you for bringing that up. But we're having a conversation about the United States of America right now, a socio-political dynamic in the United States of America, or even in the Western world, if you want to broadly define it. All you've done in that situation is deflect. You think that ultimately you're launching a strong opposition against what I'm saying, but what I'm saying is completely conducted within the confines of the Western world. Okay? The topic is anti-white racism in the Western world. Something that you brought up in the Discord was, yeah, you have no way to approach it, so you just focus back on America? No, it's because we're having a conversation specifically about anti-white racism in America, which was your gripe, which was your own personal experience. And I think, personally, that is parts condescending and also part ahistorical, because a flattening effect of racism across the board is, in many instances, a disingenuous way to frame the conversation. This is precisely why I always say, personally, that, black people are not upset about the N-word because it's simply a bad word and it hurts their feelings. Okay? Black people are upset about the N-word when a white person says it, specifically because of the historical context. It's a way to dehumanize black people. It's what its application was, and still it is used in the identical way within the confines of a white supremacist structure that they exist under. This is the reason why it's a problem, and this is precisely the reason why so many people refuse to entertain the idea. The other arguments that I show you, you never address. You never have an answer for Karen. You never have an answer for redneck. You never have an answer for, breeder. Like, the dehumanization of the in-group from the out-group happens in many different ways, right? And in many instances, the very same people who are white identitarians, and I don't think you are one of them. I think you're just a little bit lost in the sauce because of your own personal experiences, which is why I've taken the time out to like try to address your concerns over and over again. But depending on how fucking far down you go in that Nazi attitude, which I don't think you are, but you are on the tip of the ladder right now, and I'm worried for you. Depending on how far down you go, you will find yourself doing straight pride parades. Okay, if you want to focus on America, when I was on the basketball team freshman year, I constantly got shit on for the color messaging on a weekly basis, actually getting jump on my teammates, directly following statements that regardless of my race, is that just them being mean? What happened to you there is an anecdote. It is a personal experience that you had when you were in high school in your freshman year, and as a 27-year-old man, you've held on to. That is an individual act of violence towards you, and it is completely unacceptable, obviously. But to say that this was anti-white racism, and anti-white racism is like, in certain contexts, just as bad as anti-black racism, and I want you to understand something very important here. If they beat your ass for being a nerd, it would be the exact same thing, okay? It is not a protected, marginalized identity for an obvious reason, because there is no, unless we talk about Pol Pot, okay, there was no systematic violence dished out against nerds historically or in contemporary society. Them jumping your ass and saying, white boy, we're jumping your ass for that reason, which sounds fucking like it's out of like a shitty 90s movie, I'm gonna be honest with you. But let's say they did that, right? I'm not denying your personal lived experience here. That anecdote that you are delivering here is an individual act of violence that is still completely and utterly unacceptable. It is not the same as anti-black or anti-Chinese, anti-Asian racism or any other kind of marginalized identity. It, in that situation, is identical to you getting jumped and beat the shit out of for being a fucking nerd. They said a lot more than that. Please, go ahead. Explain it to us. You should explain your own bullied past to the chatter. Hopefully it makes more sense. I mean, it won't make sense. He's just like brother, I've never said it was the same. It is racism. Racism towards black people is most of the time worse. I'm not denying that. What do you mean most of the time? Dude, I had a teacher call me Osama bin Laden and the whole class laughed and called me that for months. I am mad at the whites for that. I'm mad at them for not seasoning their food. Yeah, I know. The only thing that makes me happy about this is that, like, no matter how much we have this conversation, and within the confines of Reddit, especially if you go to like certain subreddits, people will be really aggressive about this. Most people in the real world, regardless of their own personal experiences, don't have this fucking level of like, don't have this kind of smoke to be like, listen, you don't actually understand. Anti-white racism is a problem and you're fucking minimizing it. That's why you only hear that from like some of the most aggressive right-wing shitheads. Okay? Every single one of us has an individual act of bullying that we have experienced, myself included. Okay? Everyone has a story similar to that. The difference between someone in a position of power doing that to you while also doing it within the context of a system that is ultimately against you, like is infinitely worse and very different, especially when you have to exist under that system all the time and you feel utterly powerless against that. Okay? They wouldn't have attacked him for being white if the systemic shit wasn't there, proving your point again. Handled this dude with care. He's one bad remark from using DEI as a slur. I also can't... What? This is the type of narrative that creates a toxic cesspool in your Discord? Brother, I much prefer the toxic cesspool in my Discord than the fucking toxic cesspool of this kind of attitude that happens not just on Discord, but on subreddits. And if you have an issue with that, I'll be honest with you, have fun in those other communities then, okay? Because you started this conversation by literally saying, under certain contexts, saying the N-word is nowhere near as bad as saying cracker to a white person. And I think that is ridiculous. Okay. This guy isn't even white. He said he was Asian on his Reddit account. Yeah, I saw that. He says that that's not his that's not his Reddit account, by the way. But I suspect, I don't know if this is the case or not. He didn't want to. Yeah, he didn't want to actually. He didn't want to actually talk to us on camera, and he claims he is white and not Asian. This guy's like an Israeli that Palestinians threw rocks at and say their suffering is equal to the Palestinians. Yes. I never posted a Reddit thread about any of the Discord posts, Lamau. It's not. That's not what they're saying. In this parallel universe where a bunch of black students were being racist towards this guy because he was white, does that mean they targeted all white students in high school or just him? If you want to just tell me how I'm wrong on guest star, I'm still down, but this is just sad in my opinion. Brother, you have been literally crying in this fucking community for the past, 3 days now, okay? I've been very nice. I've been very charitable. I've been trying to fucking understand your perspective and offer you, like, you definitely have touched on a certain points, a couple different talking points that I would say is crossing a line that would normally get you banned, but because I'm trying to walk you off this fucking edge here, I haven't banned you. Like the moment that you personally said saying the N-word, okay, in the context, like, saying the N-word with a soft A is not as bad as saying cracker to a white person, like you're gone. You're far gone. Okay? That's completely ridiculous. Like there's no justification for that. You feel me? Anyway, we're going to get to the normal news now, okay? The Slovakia Prime Minister Robert Fico is in stable but serious condition after shooting, doctors say, BBC News.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the programme. I'm Sally Bundock. We begin in Slovakia, where Prime Minister Robert Fico remains in hospital after hours of surgery to save his life following an apparent assassination attempt. The Deputy Prime Minister Thomas Taraba told the BBC that the operation had gone well and he expected Mr. Fico to survive. The Prime Minister was shot several times as he was leaving a government meeting. Well, let's go live to Bratislava now and speak to our correspondent there, Bethany Bell. Bethany, what more can you tell us this morning?
Well, we're waiting for further official updates on Robert Fico's health, but we did hear, as you said, from the Deputy Prime Minister saying that he was no longer in danger of his life after having had this emergency operation that went on for several hours, we understand. The Deputy Prime Minister said Mr. Fico had been shot at very close range in the stomach and, what he said in his words, in the joint. So we wait, and very much this whole country is waiting with tenterhooks to see just the situation of Mr. Fico's health this morning.
And Bethany, just remind us of the events that took place yesterday.
Well, Mr. Fico was attending a government meeting in the town of Handlova, a town in central Slovakia, and he came out to greet members of the public who had come to see him. And as he did so, there were shots heard. People described hearing several shots. Mr. Fico fell to the ground, and others then apprehended a man, a suspect. And here's more from Sarah Rainsford.
Robert Fico strode out to meet supporters, as he likes to do. But as he reached out to shake hands, a man in the crowd reached for a gun. 5 shots rang out, and the Slovak Prime Minister tumbled to the ground. Too late, his security guards leapt on the gunman. The Prime Minister was first dragged and then rushed to emergency care. Too badly hurt to get back to Bratislava, he was airlifted to a nearby hospital. We were told he'd been shot in the stomach and arm, and his condition was critical.
I heard 3.
Kai is here. Hello. My baby's here. Okay. That's right. Sorry to the 8 Slovakian chatters who wanted me to. Sorry for the 8 Slovakian chatters, but this is very prescient. Very important issue here. The Queen has returned. The Queen has returned to the castle. The baby. Kaya jumps other dogs. Wait, what? Why are you saying that? No, she doesn't. It's down to 7 now. Look what you've done. Yeah. If you want proof that J Miles is a shit stir and not white at all, check mod chat. What is this? Oh, it is him. Oh, that is actually him. Oh, he's not white. Oh, so that was actually him. And it's been bait this entire time. J Miles. No wonder he didn't want to do a fucking cam, dude. So I saw this Cobalt 1137 account, and I thought personally that maybe it's not him. But yeah, we found your account, dude. Where's he at? For the past like week or so, he's been just doing this. That was me in the convo, lol. Hassan was responding to my experience. It was wild. If I would have grabbed the entire chat log and changed white to Mexican, you think we were on a fucking right-wing extremist Discord. I'm the guy from that chat lol. It was insane. Straight right-wing extremist talking points, but just pointed towards white people. So he said all this, right? Like the guy that Asmongold subreddit, the guy that like XQC and all of these other like adjacent communities were talking about, saying like, dude, it's incredible how anti-white racist these guys are. I did not leave. Okay. I am white. What the fuck, Lamau? I just don't understand, because what the fuck are you talking about it here? Like, so for example, I was watching a documentary with one of my Mexican friends a couple years ago about the opium issue in China where I'm from. He made a joke about it and my ancestors because he knows I'm Asian, and it was hilarious and I was laughing and we had a good time. In summary, he enjoyed making the joke and I enjoyed receiving the joke. Should we not do this to our own private lives because someone on Reddit says this is wrong? Also, saying a rude phrase doesn't necessarily mean you're being rude. Context matters. For example, I'm playing basketball with my friend and I say, fuck you, dude, after he makes a three-pointer, and that's perfectly fine. But if we were walking down the street and I see a stranger and I say, fuck you, dude, then that phrase becomes a rude act. Context is everything. Same with jokes. I can't be part Asian and part white. I'll go cam now. I'll cam right now, bud. Bro, that's crazy that you fucking said that you come to tell to all my black childhood friends next time we're at a bar and he makes a joke related to my Asian ethnicity. You'll see both of us are laughing like we normally do when we make those types of jokes and enjoying ourselves. No harm intended. That's how jokes work, bud. Not racist at all. And then you put your fucking Discord on there. So yeah, we found out that I personally thought that you were like, you know, maybe being honest and maybe fucking talking about, I don't know, the victimization that you experienced or whatever. And I don't know. Now I don't even know. Because you said that that wasn't you when I said like that's your, you know, like it's, you do have to recognize that it's a little bit weird for us in this community, at least, especially when you're like complaining about anti-white racism for the past like fucking couple months, or not couple months, sorry, for the past couple of days, which is like extended into this like massive thing. And there's probably a much higher likelihood that you might have been bullied for being Asian, but even then you're talking about it right here, saying that like you don't have any racism amongst your black friends, and that you and your black friends actually are they say racist stuff to one another all the time, openly admitting that they see you as an Asian person and not as a white person in your group of friends. And even when you guys are racist to one another, which is perfectly valid amongst friends, by the way, like you make jokes that you normally would not make in other circumstances. And you're saying that like you're defending that principle. So that's the thing that doesn't make sense to me personally. Like, I don't want to discount your personal opinions. I don't want to discount your personal experience as someone who has gotten a lot of mileage out of this, right? Gotten a lot of mileage out of this, like perceived, you know, anti-white bullying that you experience. None of that changes the reality of the things that I speak on as far as like systematic violence. But I will say that it is quite odd that, you know, you're a fan of Destiny and you went to a subreddit after the shit stirring that you engaged in the Discord. And I tried to like very charitably describe to you, you know, thinking that you were getting bullied for being a white guy or whatever, that there's a difference between someone, you know, calling a woman a Karen or whatever, right? A white woman a Karen versus someone calling a black person the N-word. And now it makes a lot more sense that you actually don't have issue with saying the N-word, like Destiny saying the N-word in general. But I do appreciate to a certain degree the lengths that people in this dude's community go to like create these grand narratives. I do personally find it funny, however, when I see so many other motivated content creators in this space that we're in eat that bait up so aggressively. Like, and it exposes a genuine weakness in the way that I operate, which is that I will always entertain a conversation thinking that there's someone whose mind I can change, or at least others that are watching. You know what I mean? And it is wild. It is legitimately wild that this, once again, has yielded an entire week of discourse about anti-white racism being a genuine blight on my community and on this platform in general, on Twitch in general, while simultaneously the community that you come from literally utilizes the N-word with regular frequency, and you yourself have defended the usage of the N-word from a white guy saying the N-word, saying it's not as bad. So I don't know, if you truly do find yourself like a Democratic Party voter, or find yourself to be a relatively progressive person, you know, keep dodging, bro. You're simply dodging. I can prove to you that I'm a white in 2 seconds. You can say that people are white despite being Middle Eastern. People can have multiple identities. No, I'm not even discounting you. I'm not even discounting you personally. I'm just simply stating that you're saying that your friends see you as Asian and make like anti-Asian jokes against you. I'm not saying you're not white. I think the point you're failing to understand is that it's not that you're white or Asian, it's that you're dishonest. Does that make sense? Like, you have deliberately misrepresented yourself and your past experiences in the Discord, specifically to talk about a hypothetical scenario, or maybe a real one, where you got bullied for being white, in an effort to say that this personal anecdote actually means that anti-white racism and anti-white discrimination does exist and is very violent, and it ends up flattening. It has a flattening effect on you know, broadly defining racism as like any and every kind of circumstance off of like inalienable characteristics, right? Which is the main point of contention here. The main point of contention here is not like your personal experiences. I still think it's fucked up that you got beat up. You know what I mean? Really covering the hot button topic of don't say the N-word. It is kind of wild that it is a hot button topic. Like, it's not even, I thought this is something that we had moved past. Right? You never once mentioned you're mixed white Asian because it wouldn't have fit the narrative you painted. Yes. I do think that it is a little lame and a little weird. His teenage bullies did what though? Say we respect their Asian heritage, but we're about to beat the white out of you? Yeah, that's what they said. Half white and Asian here. I've been called a white girl in my friend group for years, but I realized feeling offended by my friends' jokes on my whiteness was just my white fragility talking. I almost fell down the anti-white pipeline. I think mixed white kids need to be aware of their own white fragility. Sure. Fair. Maybe the chatter is white and he went to the Japans to start trade with the East only to get pissed on by samurais and get involved in a regional war. So much for the tolerant left. Yeah, except if he is a Hatamoto, okay, he went to the Japans, was an Anjin, okay, Anjin-sama, and then became Hatamoto as a white guy. I feel like that's literally elevating a white dude that's otherwise mediocre to a position of power so fucking quickly. Defeats the whole narrative, you know what I mean, of this whole like anti-white behavior. Anjin-sama is a perfect demonstration that like you could be white and kind of mediocre, and even in Japan when there's not a lot of other white guys, they're like, you know what, dude? We're going to fucking elevate you to the tippy top of society. Anyway. And also, yeah, he fucking dicked down half of the concubines, brother. What are we talking about? Hatamoto literally laid down white boy swagoo all over Edo, okay? He was like, God damn, this shit is fire, actually. I don't even want to go back. White people are smelly as fuck. That's what he said, literally. Okay, spoiler alert, end of Shogun is basically Anjin-sama being like, I love the Japan so much, I'm gonna kill myself, okay? Which is what I see you guys doing quite a bit, and I'm with it. Like, I'm with the shits. I'm gonna kill myself. That's how much I fucking love Japan. Okay. And also him seeing a reflection of his past life in the form of his crewmates that he sees fucking smelling like doo-doo, okay, drunk as fuck, and going, ew, gross, the Japanese are so much better. Yeah, and also, of course, the ultimate white boy swagoo, which is speaking perfect Japanese and impressing everyone in the Japans. Yeah. Anjin, some of the original weeb, yeah, he is an original otaku. So, yeah. So, you know, I find it extremely weirdo behavior. Like, where it's not being called into question whether you're like full-blown white or perceived white or whatever the fuck. Your self-defense, your self-delete jokes are worse than your racist jokes by far. And I say this as a mixed race person. Wait, what? Self-delete? You mean like suicide? Bro, that is, I gave you an actual thing that happened on a TV show. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, that wasn't, I wasn't making a joke about suicide. I was saying that in the show, he's like, holy shit, you guys do a lot of seppuku. And that's how with the shits I am. Like, that's how fucking weebed out I am. I'm going to do that to myself now to prove to you that I am real. I'm like, that's how much of an otaku I am. Your chat is higher than lead exposure? No, it's neurodivergence. That's all it is. Seppuku is not suicide is much more honorable. Yeah. Acting like a secret operative for a twice divorced kick streamer is crazy. Y'all could just get jobs with the government instead. Yeah. Or just like, I don't know, pick up a hobby. Like, genuinely, pick up a hobby. Pick up a hobby that's like better for you. I think if we actually talk, the arguments will fall flat. I think your talking points only work when you can't have someone you can talk directly back to you. I don't think you could defend your point of view over an actual voice chat. I think you can only defend by screaming over me. I genuinely have not been screaming over you at all. I think that it's kind of weird that you have still been doing this and you've been baiting so hard. I literally fucking invited you to do guest star. You, for some weird reason, said you didn't want to do guest star with your face and just your voice. And now you've been invited on to the broadcast. You just want to fucking bait me for some reason. And I don't know. You've been doing it for the past couple of days. You're getting trolled so hard. I mean, I don't know if this is like, would you consider this actually trolling at this point? It's just like he's kind of made a fool of himself. Yeah. So have fun with that, chatter. What is this? Do your side quest today, chat. Go to twitch.tv/SeanTheBlack. Click the 3 dots. Report live stream as the reason you put violent threats and put this clip. This dude is like, hey, if I can't be on Twitch for being a fucking horrible asshole, no one can. Okay. Let's move on. Was Johnny Somali racist when he was in Japan? Johnny Somali was everything, dude. Do you think that I don't think that like black people have the capacity or in any circumstance whatsoever to be like annoying or awful? Like, yeah, dude. I don't know why you think this is a fucking own. It's so strange. Ban this twat. He's still trying to fucking farm. Yeah, I don't really understand it. Yeah, he was. He was being incredibly fucking racist. What the fuck? I said racist? Yes, dude. Yes. 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 Are you going to say that like, oh, but Japan is 98% Japanese. How can you be racist to the Japanese? Because when he was being racist to the fucking Japanese, he was being racist to the Japanese by screaming Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So Johnny Somali wasn't being racist to the Japanese on the virtue of him being black and them being Japanese. He was being racist to the Japanese on the virtue that they were fucking annihilated by American atomics. Once again, tying this back to historic violence, colonial violence or imperial violence, but violence nonetheless, that an entire nation was subjected to. If it's tied to systemic violence, then yes, there is an adequate reason as to why this would be considered racist in the way that you understand racism. Okay? That's it. That's literally, it's that simple. It is unironically. And for the record, yes, Imperial Japan was colonialist and imperialist and supremacist too, for the record, which I openly admit and regularly criticize. They did their own fucking Holocaust-style experiments in Manchuria, for example. America's utilization of nukes on a civilian population 2 times in a matter of 2 days had nothing to do with that. I don't understand why we go into these like weird fucking logic holes when the ultimate conversation that we're dancing around is usually just, you know, your feelings, your own personal feelings about maybe not being able to say the N-word and how that's kind of fucked up. As a white person or as an Asian person, you can't say the N-word and that kind of upsets you a little bit. So maybe other people shouldn't be able to say cracker. Do you get it? It is also additionally hilarious to have this conversation. It is also additionally hilarious to have this conversation while there's a much, much larger conversation that we've been having surrounding Israel. Okay? There's a difference between the criticisms of Zionism and Zionists in general versus saying like anti-Jewish bullshit. Okay? Do you not understand? Do you not understand the difference? You can't do anti-Semitism in a way to like, in a way to criticize Israel. I think that's fucking ridiculous. And I don't allow that. Perhaps you should investigate as to why I don't do that. Because when you are being anti-Semitic, you are shitting on Jewish people as a marginalized identity. Okay? A marginalized identity that has been subjected to pogroms historically and also the Holocaust on the virtue of not being considered white, or in Germany, it was considered Volk, the in-group. Okay? They were not. This is why a lot of people clowned on Whoopi Goldberg when she said the Holocaust was white-on-white violence, because it certainly was not white-on-white violence in the way that the German government dished it out. Nazis considered Jews to be not white, not a part of the in-group. Bro, you are my idol. You read my mind. You are literally him. Candace Owens or whatever her name is racist. America was flexing on the USSR. They didn't do it to fucking defend Chinese people. Exactly. So that's it. I hope that this is understandable for you. Oh yeah, this was the final chapter of Mr. I got bullied in high school for being white, even though, you know, my friends view me as Asian and not white in other circumstances, but maybe you got bullied for being white in an all-black high school, and your dad works with inner city rappers, as you said. Here's what he had to say about the Cutie Saga. And in so many circumstances, this guy openly was like, dude, I'm not even a fan of Destiny, dude. I'm not even a fan of Destiny at all. I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I'm a fan of yours, actually, but this is the one issue where I disagree with you on, Mr. Inner City Rappers. I just woke up and saw all this chaos. I am wrong, lol. You're right. I just saw the cutie image. Not saying it's right, but it's partially why I like Destiny. Dude is so unhinged. Bro, at a certain point, you have to realize, like, this battle that you think you're fighting for another fucking content creator is not good for your brain, okay? It's not. Bro, they're feeding this J-Moz motherfucker the dumbest talking points in a crusty-ass Discourse server. He's not being genuine. I understand that there's a lot of bad faith in this argument. 99% don't care about the supposed slur against white people, but what do we lose in conceding them that point? If we say, sure, we won't say that, what do we lose exactly? Great question. Perhaps one of the only productive questions that has been asked in this entire saga. There is a reason why I'm a stubborn fucking asshole who doesn't actually concede on this point. Because conceding on this point implies that, yes, you are right. Racism is flattened out, as a matter of fact. And anti-white racism is, you know, in the same orbit of severity as other forms of racism against marginalized communities that is associated with historic violence against said communities. And that is not something that I will agree with, no matter what you do. And that's precisely the reason why I don't concede on this point, not because I think it's like good and awesome to say cracker all the time. If you noticed, I rarely ever use it myself personally. Like there's been, I think, 3-4 instances maximum, one of which I got banned for, where I called someone a cracker ass bitch. Beyond that, I don't usually use it. It's making you look terrible, Lamau. No, the irony is, I don't think a lot of you guys see it. If you think this conversation that I'm relitigating over and over again actually makes me look bad, I don't think you understand how the actual real world views it. And that's another part of this conversation that I try to explain to people. Yes, it makes me look bad in a very specific community, a community that is majority white, a community that's like kind of nerdy, that doesn't go outside that much. That's precisely the reason why certain subreddits, this kind of discourse pops off in. But it's no different than saying like, bro, they're really eating your ass in the fucking 4chan poll threads. It does not matter, because the reality is, for the broadest subsects of society, this kind of discourse is so unimaginably laughable that, as I like to mention over and over again, Nabisco, a cracker giant, okay, Wheat Thins, made a marketing moment out of it. That's how much of a laughable thing this is to average people, okay? I need you to understand this. And this goes to another point that I make all the time. It ends up hitting like every single fucking important aspect that I try to talk about, which is echo chambers and the way that a lot of these hyper online communities, especially with how alienated we are, especially how isolated we are, create a false narrative in your mind. You're surrounded by people who agree with you. And this happens to us as well in this community too, certainly. Okay. And I try to like shake people back to reality all the time. Whenever someone goes, that's a microaggression and it's unacceptable, or this person is bad because like they said something that I find to be upsetting or annoying. And I try to like tell people all the time, and this leftist space, that they need to be a little bit more normal and a little bit more considerate to people's like shortcomings in this situation. But overall, what I'm trying to explain is that when you find yourself in these splinter discords, when you find yourself in these communities online and Reddit, and everyone is like, yeah, this is so fucking racist. Am I right, guys? You end up losing touch with reality. That's why I'm showing you once again the most definitional proof that I can show you that this discourse is so laughable that a fucking cracker corporation participated in it and gave me a cracker pass. Think about how friendly brands are. Think about how scared brands are of offending groups, offending identities, offending anyone and everyone. If you find something to be even remotely polarizing, okay, if you find something to be remotely polarizing, a fucking brand is never going to touch that subject. And yet Wheat Thins did. Now think about that. That is because the only people that get offended at this are people in your immediate orbit, in those like hyper alienated communities that you participate in. And I'm trying to explain to you, please understand that the broadest subsects of culture, no matter how hyped up you get in those extremely isolated communities online, no one else fucking agrees with you. These people, I guarantee, see when they hear a white people joke, but don't say anything in real life because they know people would look at them weird. What I don't actually get here is the C word isn't racist, but there are actually semi-racist words targeted at white people in other languages in other countries. Like, it's still not really racism, but it's so absurd how these people aren't even anti-white words. The C word is an acknowledgement of power, not an oppression amidst lack of power. Yeah. I would say your community is more mature than any other, not gonna lie. Sometimes there's an issue with that too. Bro's a yapper. That's, I don't like, fuck you. Hasanabi's nipple, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. And also, Pod About List, thank you for the raid. Podcast About List with the raid, okay. Yeah, I got. I'll admit it. I'll fucking hang it. I'll hang it up. It's over. Kaya! A-Cap for Cutie, thank you for the 10 gifted subs, allowing 20 total people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. You fucked me up. Calm Like a Tom with another 10 gifted subs. Veer Coglak, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. All right. I hope that conceding on the C word being a slur also validates that there's a coherent white identity when there isn't. Whiteness is just being accepted into the in-group. Whiteness has never been about having white skin. It's just about the dehumanization of black and brown skin so that we can justify the oppression against them. Yes, you're absolutely correct on that, which is precisely the reason why many people literally go, Hassan is not white. He's fucking Middle Eastern. He's Turkish. He's Muslim. Whenever they have this conversation, except I am fucking white. And ironically enough, Morgan, despite the fact that she wears a hijab, is also white. Not only is she like directly half white and half Lebanese, she's very white in the same exact ways that I am. Okay? But of course, that whiteness is immediately taken away in this conversation because you have to be a part of the out group in this situation to like amplify the severity. Okay? Which in and of itself is a perfect demonstration of the exact concept that I was trying to fucking explain here, which is that whiteness is in-group dynamics, and that's simply what it is. Okay? Clothing changes your race. Brother, I don't know if you understand this, but there is perhaps no better representation of race being a socio-political construct than exactly this question that you are asking. That's it. That's it. I'm white. However, I'm white up until the moment that someone decides I am not. Anyway, the point is, it's a sad state of affairs for many who are maybe unwilling participants in this conversation who get lost in the sauce because they think it's a valid argument. Do you get it? Like, there are plenty who are ride or die. Like that guy, Jay Miles or whatever, he's ride or die. He's a fedayeen for the cause. He is like personally saying like, oh, I got bullied for being white, and then fucking going to the Discord, going to Destiny's subreddit to be like, yeah, I got him. You know, it was crazy. I can't believe it. I love you. I love how unhinged you are, lol. Like, you know, the cutie Cinderella stuff was like great. All this stuff, while simultaneously he's like, I'm a fan of yours, Hassan. I can't believe you're like coming after me in this way. You know, doing this like anti-white racism. It's really, really fucked up. And he has no issue with his favorite content creator saying the N-word, right? That guy is maybe a little bit more lost in the sauce than the average person, but there are plenty of people that are in the edges of said community that might even subscribe to that concept because they make a solid argument in that moment without it being contested at all. And then before they realize it, they are falling down the same radicalization pipeline towards the right that I want to shake you out of. That's it. I used to think you were exaggerating about Dee's community prior to this year. Yeah, because I never really talked about it. But this kind of behavior is not new. Like, not even a little bit. This has been ongoing for 5 years now at this point. Let's move on, though. I'm done. I'm done talking about it because it's fucking lame as shit. And now everyone's talking about how much of a loser DJ and him and his community are. Yeah. Let's continue with the Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico in stable but serious condition after the shooting, doctors say.
3 shots. It was
Go to Gaza and help, you political pussy. Fair. Yeah, you're right. Because of my anti-genocide position, I should go and be genocided. Like, how will I do that? One. And number two, that's not really a good argument. You're like, damn, dude, you're anti-genocide. You're fucking fundraising for victims of an ethnic cleansing campaign. How about you go die with the very same tax dollars that you have given that go to Israel so that like the very same military machine that you fund can kill you. It's like a long and convoluted way of doing a Hatamoto style seppuku campaign. Come to Gaza, ain't nobody gonna jump you. Outside of people that were fans of D before his Israel saga, I feel like the general public view of him is icky and weird. Yes, because he always gets in his own way. He can't stop himself from being fucking awful.
It was quick, one by one, like if you throw firecrackers on the ground. I saw a scratch on the Prime Minister's head, and then he fell next to the barrier. It's a nightmare.
Robert Fico has plenty of opponents. Slovakia is a small country that's deeply divided politically, but no one saw this coming, and all have lined up to condemn it.
I'm shocked. We are all shocked by the terrible and vicious attack on Prime Minister Robert Fico. A physical attack on the Prime Minister is, first of all, an attack on a person, but it is also an attack on democracy. Hateful rhetoric, which we can see in society, leads to hateful actions. Please stop it.
The suspected gunman was captured at the scene. We think he's in his 70s, but we don't know yet what drove him. In a video that's doing the rounds, he says he didn't like government policy, but it's just a few seconds out of context. Moments before the shooting, Robert Fico was at this press conference. He made a political comeback last year, elected on a pro-Russian platform. No more arms to Ukraine, a push for peace talks, and a veto on Ukraine joining NATO. He's since made moves against the public media that worry the opposition here and the EU. His team are calling the shooting a political attack, blaming the opposition and press for portraying him as a monster. But the Prime Minister himself is confrontational, his language inflammatory.
That's
his team
crazy.
say he's now off
my
the
man, bro, my man got shot. Okay, if he wasn't like, I don't know what his actual like full-blown perspective is, but it seems like he's like kind of pro-Russia. Okay, but it's wild because like under no circumstances would the media ever fucking talk about an assassination attempt on a fucking leader like this, with the idea that like he was kind of deserving it, if it wasn't like being pro Vladimir Putin. That's crazy. Like, I'm sure he sucks ass, okay? I am not discounting that at all. That's insane, brother. I've never seen mainstream media be like, well, he was kind of deserving it because of how inflammatory he is. He does. He's really conservative. Yeah, I'm not even remotely surprised. He's fucking, if he's pro Vladimir Putin in any capacity, of course he's fucking, who's Robert Fico, the Slovakian prime minister? Much of the discussion Mr. Fico's leadership is focused on is ties to President Vladimir Putin of Russia and Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary. I gave her venison leg this time. Most people went, he deserved it after Shinzo Abe got shot too. Pretty funny. No, most people said that. The mainstream media did not. I am you know, all I'm going to say is I'm not sitting here being like, wow, it's really can't believe a leader got shot by an angry citizen. Okay. As the contradictions worsen globally, you know, many of these cases will occur. It's C, not K in FISO. Oh, it's not FICO, it's FISO. He's a former commie and reformed Islamophobic social democrat. It is read as Fitzo, not Fico. He was a communist most of his life. Time to take the right wing of his country's take. Okay, excuse me. It's really easy to celebrate as an American who knows nothing about the country and why it's pro-Russian. Okay, guys. Please calm down. Okay? I need you to understand something. Okay? Number one, I'm mostly memeing. Okay? Number two, it's giving Z a little bit. Okay? Like, there's a difference. Fuck Putin. Okay, well, there's a difference between my assessment and my criticisms of American imperialism versus me openly championing any politician that aligns with Vladimir Putin. Okay? Like Viktor Orban, as a matter of fact. Not a big fan of him either. Okay? Mr. Fico, who had been a Communist Party member while it was in power, founded the Smer Party in the late 1990s and began the first of his 3 terms as prime minister in 2006, serving for 4 years before going into opposition after his coalition lost an election. Slovakia is a landlocked country of around 5 million people. The Smer Party, which started out on the political left but has increasingly embraced right-wing views on immigration and the cultural issues, has governed as a part of a coalition. I will openly state one thing before we continue with this conversation. I don't know enough about Slovakian politics at all. That much probably is very clear to many of you. Okay? I don't. I don't necessarily care, nor do I know a lot about this 5 million landlocked country and the internal conflict. Okay? I do know, broadly how Eastern Bloc countries post Soviet dissolution, how they operate. But El Political Commentator, I would be an El Political Commentator if I personally told you, if I personally acted like I know and then assumed a position and then just like ran on with it and then read Wikipedia pages full of information that corresponds to my narrative so I can develop talking points and start owning interlocutors in the marketplace of ideas. Maybe even like, I don't know, trying to take on one of the most esteemed Slovakian chroniclers of history, and then getting subsequently fucking destroyed in the marketplace of ideas by a guy who doesn't even remember what my fucking last name is in that entire process. But I'm not doing that because I'm not being a fraudulent bitch. I'm telling you, I don't know. I don't know enough. Literally linked your previous takes on Russia. You do move goalposts and change your stance. This isn't the first time or the last time. You know it all, and we do. I literally linked your previous takes on Russia. You do move goalposts. What are you saying? My previous takes on Russia. This you? What is this? I'm not clicking on this fucking link. I don't know what the fuck that is. Is the sample from the Sixth Sense movie? I think bro just owned you. Probably. I don't know what he thinks I'm going to, like what thinks has changed. Top of the hour Omega Lol? Bro, what? We already ran the fucking top of the hour ad break. What are you talking about? I got owned already. You're 11 minutes late. Dummy. Anyway, let's continue. Much of the internal discussion of Mr. Fico's leadership in recent years is focused on his ties to Vladimir Putin of Russia and to Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary, Slovakia's southern neighbor. Mr. Fico returned to power in 2012, but is registered as Prime Minister in July 2018 following mass demonstrations over the murder of a journalist, Jan Kuciak, and his fiancée, Martina Kusnirova, who had been uncovering government corruption. The protests, which rocked the country, were the largest seen since the Velvet Revolution. Demonstrators demanded the resignation of the government and new elections. Slovakia ranks high in independent assessments of press freedom, but the protesters had also sought deeper changes in the country Mr. Fico had overseen. He returned to power in an election last fall, forming a coalition government after securing around 23% of the vote, having campaigned against sanctions that were imposed on Russia after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine began in February 2022. Not one round of the country's ammunition should be sent to Ukraine, he had told voters. That stance in a country where pro-Russian sentiment had historically been significant worried EU leaders in Brussels, who said that they feared that Slovakia could form a pro-Russian alliance with Mr. Orban and potentially Italy's leader, Giorgia Meloni. This is one of the most laughable aspects of this conversation, because Giorgia Meloni and her existence, like modern fascist movements in Italy, is a direct consequence of NATO. So Giorgia Meloni's like supposed pro-Russia sentiment was laughable to anyone who understands the motherfucking history of fascism in Italy. There would be no Giorgia Meloni because her ancestors would have been fucking culled if it wasn't for NATO. Okay? That ideology would have been wiped out completely if it wasn't for NATO involvement in Italy. Okay? So the idea that like she would actually champion the pro-Russia movement in Italy and genuinely create a pro-Russian bloc with Italy is ridiculous. Okay? She knows where her bread is buttered. Okay? Not every fucking fascist is going to automatically align with Russia. Okay? There are plenty of Western adjacent fascists who don't. That would impede support for Ukraine and the European Union. At the time, it was also seen as a sign of apparent erosion of the pro-Ukrainian bloc that Europe had formed after the invasion. Slovakia's military contributions to Ukraine were negligible compared. I mean, dude, it's Slovakia. You're spewing bullshit. She's definitely more pro-Russia and is a big Eurosceptic. I'm willing to concede on this point if you can give me firm statements beyond, actually not even statements, firm actions that she has taken beyond sentiments she expressed while running for her position. Okay? The reason why I say that is because there is no world in which an actual Italian fascist, a real Italian fascist, would ever genuinely fucking take an anti-NATO stance, because their entire position of power is predicated upon being a NATO member. It would be like Turkey being anti-NATO. It would be laughable. Recep Tayyip Erdogan can take strict stances against other NATO nations, even fucking invade or directly fight against other NATO nations. But ultimately, Turkey is a NATO country. We have American nukes in our American bases, like in Incirlik, okay? That's crazy. It's like saying Britain is pro-Putin because of Brexit, kind of. Secretary General visits Italy, welcomes contributions to NATO and support for Ukraine on the 8th of May, 2024. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg met with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome Wednesday to discuss preparations for the Washington summit, including work to further strengthen NATO, achieve fairer burden sharing, and provide more support to Ukraine. Do you think the Israel-Palestine conflict is at risk of becoming deeply entrenched in polarized left versus right identity politics, or is there still a chance of the approach with a more balanced and nuanced perspective? Wait, what? I don't know how to answer that question. I think as EU chatters are panicking about everything since Europe is sprinting back towards the right everywhere. I have EU elections this year and the Ireland First Party is just using Trump talking points. Yes, there is a genuine movement towards more openly right-wing sentiment in every European country, something that I've expressed quite a bit. And that is a byproduct of that is a byproduct of neoliberalism and its many concessions and capitulations to the far right. This is exactly the same dynamic we have experienced, and I've criticized quite a bit, in the United States of America. And that is happening in Europe as well. Okay? I remember a few years back, you were saying we export our brain rot. Yes. If you recall, if you've been a long-term Hasanabi head, back in like 2020, 2021, a lot of Europeans would be like, lol, lemao, laughing at you from the EU nations. Seems like you have quite the brain rot. And I was like, don't keep laughing. This shit's coming to your doorstep. And lo and behold, it certainly has. Okay? Now you fucking see it. The British had seen their version of it quite fast. And now all of the other European nations are also seeing the same exact bullshit happen to them as well. A neutered, feckless, powerless left party with no real coalition, no real leftist mobilization within the labor structure, or directly centrist dominating politics in your nation, center-right politicians or center-left politicians dominating your country, and increasingly taking positions that you would consider 4 or 5 years ago to be like far-right positions, like on immigration. With, of course, neoliberal austerity measures as well to accompany the move towards right-wing politics and right-wing framing. All of that will only increase volatility in your country and simultaneously, in a very dangerous way, galvanize the far-right position. Because when the left position is supposedly also on board with the right position, people are going to go, well, why the fuck am I voting for you then? France is a great example of this. You're raising the retirement age. I don't like that. You're putting fucking unnecessary taxes on certain things. I don't like that. While simultaneously, you're saying, no, Muslims are a problem and you're the one to deal with it. Well, these other guys on the other side, the far right, they're saying all of those things and have been saying it way before you. I'm going to go believe them. Because I believe you. I believe you when you say Muslims are an issue. They are a problem. There is a there is a crisis of Islam in this country now. When the left gives up and capitulates the right-wing framing on issues, all that does is give a solid foundation to far-right parties. Because they've been there. They've been advocating for these positions for quite some time. Here's a first thought video on whether Europe is doomed or not, which we can watch. But anyway, I hope that destroyed doubt. The Maloney press bit from NATO. I hope that kind of destroyed all doubt that you had. Cleared up all of the confusion that you had about Maloney's position on NATO. Okay. And it's not because I'm like personally super well read on the matter. The reason why I can be confident in my assessment in that situation is because I understand Italian history, specifically Italian fascism, which Maloney very much is an Italian fascist, right? And the only reason why there is any fascist momentum post-World War II in Italy is a direct consequence of NATO involvement.
As the EU enters its twilight years, recent statistics paint a vivid image of decline. Average people, especially children, increasingly face impoverishment, social exclusion, and material deprivation. 54% of people with disabilities can't make ends meet. Able-bodied citizens of the same age aren't far behind at 43%. 20 years of stagnant GDP growth. Real wages, slowly recovering from COVID, remain well below their pre-COVID levels due to greed-fueled inflation. Between 2021 and 2023, energy prices surged by 63%. The ravages of deindustrialization have led to unemployment rates as high as 20%, and the manufacturing sector's value to the EU economy has dropped to just 16%, leaving hollowed out communities, much like those in the US Rust Belt. To make matters worse, a resurgent and violent right wing is gaining power, war between Russia and Ukraine is raging on its borders, and as a US vassal organ, they continue to aid Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. In short, Europe is in crisis. In this episode, we'll take a look at why this is happening and what it means for the future of Europe. Before we answer that, we'd like to take a quick moment to thank this episode's sponsor, Aura. As you all know, we make political content here and on our other channels. Unfortunately, that means some people don't like us very much. These days, a quick Google search is all it takes to find someone's personal information. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all readily available for those who want to find it. That's why I've been using Aura to help keep my private details private. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. This not only cuts down on the amount of spam I get, but also helps me keep all my accounts safe from bad actors. I'll give you a real-world example. AT&T recently revealed that over 73 million customer records, both existing and former customers, were released on the dark web. They recommend that those affected change their passwords, monitor account activity, and consider fraud alerts or credit freezes from credit bureaus. This was...
How about Switzerland? Are they also doomed? I don't know about contemporary. I don't know enough about contemporary Swiss politics, but I will say Switzerland has always been Switzerland and will continue to be Switzerland. Do with that information what you will. I don't know. Maybe look into the Swiss history during World War II. And I saw a hate video about what? I'm Swedish. I saw a hate video about what?
Was a huge breach, but I don't have to worry. Aura does all of this for me. And best of all, I don't have to download a bunch of different apps just because some company couldn't keep my data secure. I value...
Is this decline also prominent in Asia? Again, not something that I'm super knowledgeable on, but as far as I will say, Asian countries are, I mean, depending on which country you're talking about, like Japan has been relatively stable for quite some time, but stable in the direction of capitulation to American imperialism. I don't see that like turning, I don't see that attitude shifting anytime soon, but it never had a lot of mobilization in the other direction. But like Vietnam, as far as I understand, is not susceptible to these kinds of right-wing shifts, but someone can speak on that better. Obviously, China is China and entirely removed from this conversation. Modi in India is a whole different story. Like, it's not, when I talk about the Western world, when I talk about the Western sphere of influence, the imperial core, and the right-wing shift that you're experiencing, it's definitely different than Asian countries. It's definitely different than the global South and like political mobilization happening in the global South. and second world nations, and certainly third world nations, like I mentioned. So it's very different, I think. There are certainly tremendous issues in a country like India. A lot of issues in Pakistan, a lot, but they're different than what we're talking about. I can't make like a broad sweeping generalization in the same way that I can for like the EU bloc. And even within the EU bloc, when you dial in to an individual country and their domestic affairs and their foreign policy, there's obviously still going to be differences, but like there is a broad momentum, an attitude shift in one direction that you can, in relatively reductive terms, cover across the board, because it's like a different. I would say it's the same. It's a very similar. It's a very similar thing that's happening in all these countries with their own personal flavor.
I value my privacy, and I'm sure you value yours. You can go to aura.com/firstthought to start your 2-week free trial, no strings attached. Try it out, and I promise you'll appreciate the peace of mind. Support the show and protect your valuable data by signing up today at the link below. Following World War II, European countries grappled with shattered infrastructure, volatile currencies, and verged on total economic collapse.
What is this?
The economic resurrection of Europe was intricately tied to American aid, most notably through 2 main instruments. First, the Bretton Woods Agreement.
What is this? Oh, I know. I just think it's funny that Hassan brought up France and then said basically the same exact thing I've been trying to explain to Mango Stare. Once again, it's sad. I understand the politics of my homeless country is better than he does. What? Okay, you guys are just having a conversation. Share with the rest of the class. No more personal conversations happening in the chat. Stop having a private conversation. What are you exchanging? What kind of notes are you exchanging in the chat right now? It's lecture time. We're learning about why Europe is doomed. Okay, pay attention.
Established a fixed exchange rate system with the US dollar. This had a stabilizing effect that allowed businesses to engage in cross-border trade with confidence. And second, the Marshall Plan, officially known as the European Recovery Program, a bill touted by President Truman and passed by Congress, which directly transferred $13.3 billion, or $173 billion today, to European countries to fund the rebuilding of factories, the improvement of transportation networks, and the revitalization of industrial production. This immense financial infusion, while crucial for reconstruction, forced European nations to cede an uncomfortable amount of control over their monetary policy to the United States. This left them unable to adjust to changing market forces by, for example, devaluing their currencies to stimulate their economy. The end result was Europe relying solely on the US dollar. Originally conceived under the influence of Cold War paranoia surrounding supposed Soviet expansionism, NATO's own expansionary trajectory over the decades has only served to deepen US entanglement in European politics and unnecessarily stoke tensions with Russia. From its inception in 1949, the bloc has been expanding aggressively, eventually including former Warsaw Pact countries and even non-aligned states like Sweden and Finland, which joined in 2023. NATO, dominated as it is by American military power, has left European nations heavily reliant on US military capabilities for their defense, leaving them little more than vassal states under American protection.
Yeah, it's a very effective way of neutering the sovereignty of a nation, which, ironically enough, France was one of the few European countries that was very critical of this kind of involvement. At the time, obviously it's very different now, but at the time, especially during the Cold War, a lot of European countries personally thought that a NATO involvement would put the crosshairs on them at the behest of the United States of America. It's not like the USSR is readily available and easy to fucking nuke mainland America, but they can very easily send ICBMs to them. That was one of the major reasons as to why they were like, well, we don't want to get the smoke from the USSR at all. And that alignment, albeit they were, happy to receive Marshall Plan dollars, they still recognized that their own personal sovereignty was going away, as they were, in the words of JT here, effectively becoming vassal states for the United States.
This coercive, asymmetrical relationship of military dependence has led the US to intervene in European politics in overt and covert ways, exemplified by a CIA campaign called Operation Gladio. During the Cold War, the CIA and their British counterpart MI6 established a secret paramilitary network operating under the umbrella of NATO, which operated across Western Europe to resist a potential Soviet threat. These paramilitaries, stationed in Italy, France, Belgium, West Germany, the Netherlands, Greece, Switzerland, and Sweden, harbored stockpiles of weapons and explosives, with some...
Now remember, something to consider here. Post-World War II, right, America quickly shifted their attention, the crosshairs, to a much scarier problem: socialism. Growing socialism, trade unionism, the momentum in the aftermath of World War II was leaning in that direction. Why? Well, because even in formerly fascist nation states, and certainly all of the other countries that either succumb to the Nazi governance or personally resisted against the Nazi governments, all of the guys that were fucking part of the alignment, part of the allied groups in every single one of the countries that we mentioned, were obviously either sympathetic to socialism or directly socialist themselves, or social democrats or trade unionists. Those were the most popular, that was the most popular game in town, because the Nazis had lost. They were brutal. They were repressive. And therefore, people were understandably very excited at the prospect that, like, the resistance was successful. They were like, well, you guys are the ones who saved us. If you recall, in the immediate aftermath of World War II, when French people were specifically polled on who shouldered the greatest burden in defeating the Nazis, overwhelmingly the French population saw the USSR as the major responsible party for defeating the Nazis. Because it's true, right? They took a heavy toll. 27 million people died in the USSR fighting against the Nazis. So America had a unique problem. They wanted to enforce their influence and quickly take advantage of the destabilization that was occurring in Western Europe. So they implemented the Marshall Plan, obviously, in an effort to rebuild Europe. America itself, far removed from the immediate damages of the conflict because they were so far away from where it was happening, did not have the same economic struggles of redevelopment that, for example, the USSR would go through. So they took advantage of they took advantage of their fortuitous geopolitical position and started implementing certain policies in Western Europe, rebuilding Western Europe, while still simultaneously recognizing that there's a lot of these like socialists and trade unionists in positions of prominence now. So they wanted to defeat their influence, and maybe even in some instances, they wanted to kill them or cause chaos in general with acts of terrorism. So who, if you are class, chat, if you are an American general, if you are a part of the American State Department and you see communism as the great evil, okay, perhaps an even greater evil than the Nazis, right? And you see these fucking disgusting little pinko red commies being celebrated as champions, right? Who do you go to fight against them? Who were the best anti-socialist fighters? If you said fascists, well, you'd be right. That is exactly who was the best anti-socialist, anti-communist fighters in all of these countries. The fascists that didn't get killed, or the fascists that, didn't withstand any kind of serious scrutiny. They were still around. Their children were still around. So what did America do? Through NATO, they put anti-communist fascists to task. Started giving them weapons, started causing them to stockpile weapons in general, started giving them directives, and even in certain instances, directly training them. There is no better example of this than the very public, broad daylight fascist promotion of power in West Germany. Almost every single NATO commander from Western Germany were directly involved. Okay, were directly involved in the Nazi regime, some of which were prominent members that didn't even participate in the plots against Adolf Hitler, mind you. Like, we're not talking about people who were like, man, this Adolf Hitler guy, Adolf, he's going a little bit too far. Yeah, maybe we should kill him. Like, not those generals. I'm talking generals who were like, yes, we love the Adolf. He was very good, misunderstood, yeah. Lebensraum is just living space. That kind of shit. Those kinds of generals were put into positions of power in NATO. And it's not like this is hidden. This is not something that was done in secrecy. This was something that was done in broad daylight. You can Google it. Look up NATO. Look up page denied. What is this? Comptroller General of the United States. Nazis and Axis collaborators were used to further anti-communist objectives in Europe. Some immigrated to the United States. No, it's not Paperclip. Paperclip is different. Operation Paperclip was taking German scientists, Nazi scientists, and bringing them to the United States that played a formative role in the development of NASA because of their rocket propulsion technology. And the USSR had their own version of that as well. What we're talking about is Gladio. Yeah, Adolf Heusinger is who I'm talking about, of course. A Nazi military officer whose career spanned the German Empire, the Weimar Republic, Nazi Germany, and West Germany, and NATO. Yeah. History.net. These NATO generals had unusual backgrounds. They served in the Third Reich. The second worst Adolf H. Yeah, not the big guy.
Some caches remaining unaccounted for even after decommissioning. What did they need stockpiles of weapons and explosives for? To enable right-wing terrorists to carry out attacks which were blamed on non-existent communist militants. The numbers are horrific. Between January 1st, 1969 and December 31st, 1987, there were 14,591, quote, acts of violence with a political motivation. Oh, and by the way, that number is for Italy alone. The Piazza Fontana massacre of 1969 marked the beginning of the violence.
This stuff was pretty violent, pretty gruesome. They also collaborated with the Italian Illuminati at the time, which is pretty interesting and funny considering that it's considering its prescience and its importance in contemporary Italian politics, considering that even Berlusconi, the Italian Freemasons, yeah, the mob, the Italian Freemasons, and even someone like Berlusconi was directly linked back to Freemasons, not Illuminati. Sorry, not Illuminati, the Freemasons. Even Berlusconi himself was a member.
The bomb in Milan killing 16 people and injuring 88. This was followed by countless other attacks. The Petiano attack in 1972 killed 3 military police officers in a car bomb explosion. The 1974 Brescia bombing, which targeted an anti-fascist demonstration, resulted in 8 deaths and over 100 injuries. Later that year, the Italicus Express bombing killed 12 and injured 48. But the most notorious incident occurred on August 2nd, 1980. A massive explosion ripped through the Bologna railway station, killing 85 and injuring 200. Hopefully this gives you a taste for how far US-aligned European countries are willing to go to appease the US. This loyalty isn't surprising since the US handpicked the leaders of Italy, France, and Greece in rigged elections in the 1940s. In Greece, when the British and their 40,000 troops found themselves unable to crush the communists there, they turned to the United States. And Greece became the first victim of, and the model for, the Truman Doctrine, which was a US policy to shape the course of European politics to align with American interests and, quote, contain communism by any means necessary. In France, Ambassador Jefferson Caffrey made it abundantly clear that economic aid to France was contingent on the exclusion of communists from the government, despite their overwhelming popularity in the 1946 elections. And
so back home, the U.S. was airing anti-fascist programming, yet shamelessly using far-right militias and groups to flush out communists. Some things never changed law. No, they weren't. At this point, this is post-World War II. So they weren't airing anti-fascist programming at all. You're thinking pre-World War II when they were doing that. Post-World War II, they were not. at that point, post World War II, we're talking any kind of movement, any kind of trade unionist movement, any kind of socialist movement, any kind of demonstration is seen as like communist nonsense, including but not limited to the civil rights movement. As a matter of fact, one of the major criticisms against Martin Luther King Jr. was that he was a commie. He was a commie agent and a collaborator, if you recall. So at that point, the United States attitude from in its domestic affairs had absolutely swung in the fascist direction, anti-communist direction.
In Italy, the CIA secretly funded political parties to the tune of $5 million a year to prevent a communist electoral victory in 1948. Speaking of 1948, the most shameful, destructive, and glaring example of EU vassalage to the US is their historical and continued support for Israel and their massacre of the Palestinian people. Many EU nations have supported and funded Israel since its founding. Let's take a quick look at their recent activity. The primary means by which the EU renders financial assistance to Israel is via funding programs such as Horizon Europe, which is allocating...
For the record, one thing to understand from the chaos in Italy at the time, Operation Gladio wasn't just about like making it unsafe to be an open socialist in a whole ass other country, or a trade unionist, or even a fucking social democrat. Like if you were center left, you were in the crosshairs of these scumbags, right? We're not talking about like dudes who are straight up card carrying Communist Party members. We're talking anyone and everyone. And this is, by the way, identical to Indonesia with the Jakarta method, identical to every other area where the United States was ever involved in the affairs of a foreign nation. It was about wiping out any and every group that the fascist far right the fascist far right government would consider a problem. In Indonesia, student protesters were a part of it. You know what I mean? In Indonesia, gay people, student protesters, like, you know, queer liberation organizations, all of that. It was all encompassing. So that's also something to consider as well. Trade unionists were massacred, slaughtered. But it wasn't just about making it unsafe to be anyone that was like even center left. It also was about creating an environment that was unsustainable, very volatile, because like a lot of that violence, especially because it was being done by like these random groups, who knows who's doing it, would then lead governments to take additional action. Because then the people would be like, well, what the fuck's going on? There's explosions happening all the time. Bring in the fucking police force. You know, create an environment of sustainability, create an environment of safety. What the fuck is your job? Your job is to do that, right? So basically, in that situation, the governments would then take aggressive action, maybe even martial law in certain instances, to create a safe environment, which then would, of course, lead to even more direct, aggressive legislative action against those who were perceived as enemies of the American state, collaborators of socialists. Okay? So I guess this is part of the reason why, for those who are uninitiated, for those who are new here, this is part of the reason why I'm very anti-NATO. I am Turkish myself, of course. This another reason, because I saw this exact same kind of violence and these exact same type of actions being conducted in my country as well, in my country's history, played a very prominent role. But not only that, but also, this is why I say, these are the reasons as to why I say America, a lot of promise, but ultimately doing a lot of bad historically. Okay? And that's important to consider, because a lot of people I see online that get clip chimped into oblivion, thinking that I'm like, I'm a campist, or I simply am like anti-America for no reason, rarely ever understand why I'm taking these positions. And I guess they're not well read on America's actions during the Cold War. So they personally think that there is no real valid reason as to be critical, as to why I'm critical of the United States and its actions. They think that it's just like, oh, I just hate America. It is reactionary thinking to assume that you are basically, you're basically bludgeoning your head with anti-intellectual thought in order to justify your position. When you go, oh, dude, you hate America. It's something that you hear, that you used to hear from right-wing reactionaries all the time. It's something that I've heard a million times over. If you don't love it, leave. You are an anti-American piece of shit. Fuck you. From the likes of Steven Crowder and their fan bases. Now, as America's empire crumbles a little bit, or its like soft power capabilities diminish every day in broad daylight, as we see what is going on in the world, and our hegemonic superpower status is like called to question. Okay, you see a lot more people that recognize those contradictions and start feeling anxiety. Okay, start feeling a sense of insecurity and a sense of anxiety, and then they turn around and also engage in this reactionary framing from ostensibly what you would consider to be the liberal side, the left side of American politics. That's why you see a lot more liberals also assuming that exact same position that you would only hear from, you know, right-wing shitheads 10 years ago. But what about China, Hassan? Great question. The what about China was, back in the day, what about the USSR? That was precisely what this campaign was. You are watching the what about USSR and all of the violent actions that unfolded at the behest of the what about the USSR question.
An eye-watering 111 billion euros in grants through 2027. While it's not clear whether the entire sum is going to Israel, the fact that they're getting anything is horrifying. It's already funded 1,600 Israeli research and innovation projects between 2014 and 2020. As far as individual EU member states are concerned, Germany is the second largest exporter of arms to Israel, to the tune of $353 million in 2023 alone. This funding and sale of arms makes Germany as complicit as the United States in Israel's countless war crimes, decades of human rights violations, and the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians. In recent events, the Russia-Ukraine war shattered the EU's tenuous grasp on energy security. The EU's heavy dependence on Russian energy exports, natural gas in particular, suddenly became a crisis nearly as dire as the war itself. To give you an idea of how insecure the EU's energy supply was before the war, in 2020, over 85% of the gas consumed in the EU originated from external sources, with Russia accounting.
Why are some right-wingers of the USA anti-NATO then? Oh, dude, the easiest question of all time, easiest answer of all time. They're fucking stupid. That's it. That's why I personally love right-wingers who now love Russia. Because, like, their entire lives, they've been convinced that the USSR is the great evil, right? And then all of a sudden, they get into a fucking Telegram channel with a couple FSB operatives in it being like, yes, Vladimir Putin is doing great things. He's killing trans people. He's invading a special military operation in Ukraine because Ukraine is gay. And they're like, hell yeah, brother, I love Russia now. I fucking hate NATO. Yeah. Like, imagine going against your entire lives social programming on a whim because a couple dudes told you that, like, Russia is also anti-gay. Like, you have to be the absolute dumbest person on the fucking planet to get duped that way. And many right-wingers are that fucking stupid. So that's the answer to the question, why are some right-wingers in USA anti-NATO then? It's pretty funny, in my opinion. Like, imagine being this reactionary freak your whole fucking life, thinking that the USSR is coming to get you, okay? The Red Scare. And then turning around and on a whim being like, actually, no, Russia is awesome now. And that's why I'm anti-NATO. Because if you're right-wing, you should love NATO, right? I mean, it's like American dominance. There's no greater example of, like, pure American dominance. There's no better way for America to reassert its power position as the hegemonic superpower on the planet than, like, 400 fucking military bases that we know of all around the globe, some of which feature American nukes. Right? And then all of a sudden turning around and being like, all of that social conditioning gone because now I think Russia is anti-gay. Awesome.
Accounting for a staggering 48% of total imports. Pre-war projections showed that, because of declining production in the Netherlands, imports of Russian energy were due to increase in the coming years. Then Russia invaded Ukraine, and the war triggered what might be the worst energy crisis in the EU's history. Within days of the invasion, supply disruptions caused crude oil to soar past $130 per barrel, an astonishing 50% increase compared to pre-war levels. Natural gas, a critical fuel source.
So you're anti-NATO for the same reason that dumb Republicans are, because you're a foe? Yes.
For European heating and power generation.
Isn't their position more nuanced than anti-gay for Republicans that were literally anti-Russia because they thought that Russia was a continuation of the USSR their whole fucking lives since like at least the 90s, to turn on a dime in the last 4 to 8 years and be like pro-Russia? No, their position is not more nuanced than anti-gay. I don't think. I think their position unironically is like they were always anti-Russia. They were told to be anti-Russia, so they were always anti-USSR, anti-Russia, and now, you know, their attention span and their lack of object permanence has caused them to be pro-Russia now. Do you drink your Diet Mountain Dews at room temperature? Fuck no.
Fared even worse. Panic buying gripped nations heavily reliant on Russian gas as complete cutoff seemed ever more imminent. According to the European Central Bank, prices skyrocketed by 180% in the first 2 weeks. To make matters worse, in September, a series of explosions in the Baltic Sea destroyed vital pipelines known as Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, built to transport natural gas from Russia to Germany.
I saw some people on a Reddit, like a subreddit thread that I saw on Hassan _Piker, arguing that I was wrong for laughing at the notion that Russia had blown up its own pipeline. The subreddit thread was not from when the Nord Stream explosion happened. It was from yesterday. There are still people who literally hit that line that like Russia did it to themselves after numerous investigations have been concluded on the matter. Wow. Like, they post my W's as L's over there. I don't know what the fuck's going on.
While investigations into the incident are ongoing, the country with the most motive and ability to carry out such an attack was and remains the United States, despite vague claims from US and German officials that, quote, evidence points toward a Ukrainian-backed group or a pro-Ukrainian group operating without the knowledge of the leadership in Kyiv. While the initial frenzy has somewhat subsided, the war's influence on energy prices continues to hobble the EU. As of late 2023, natural gas prices remain around 11% higher than pre-war levels. This increase has had a ripple effect throughout the European economy, driving up the cost of goods and services and squeezing household budgets. The energy price surge has become a rallying cry for European leaders to work together to accelerate the transition to renewable energy sources like wind and solar, and to diversify their supplier base by seeking reliable, alternative sources for gas imports to lessen dependence on Russia. Unfortunately for the EU, they appear to be trading dependence on Russia for dependence on the US. In 2022, the EU saw a massive 70% surge in LNG imports from the US compared to the...
Make a divorce joke right now. I'm being divorced right now. Luckily, I have a prenup. Also, I was the one who cheated, but that's another story. Bro, don't fucking admit that. But I'm glad you have a prenup, King. I'm glad you have a prenup, King. I'm sorry you're going through that, okay? That's right, brother. I'm fucking pro. Listen, I'm pro sticking it to the man, and the man being family court, okay? The only aspect of American society. Well, not the only aspect. Men are under attack everywhere, but certainly most salient in the family court structure. Let me tell you something. Okay, don't admit that you cheated, though.
The previous year, the US wasted no time seizing the vacant market share in the first 9 months of 2022, snatching up 44% of the total. While this rapid shift helped the EU meet its immediate energy needs, US companies are now raking in enormous profits, with estimates suggesting a single LNG shipment could return as much as $150 million. It's price gouging on an international scale, made possible by the US essentially holding Europe hostage both militarily and economically. Despite recent moderate increases in defense spending, Europe's militaries remain ill-equipped and disjointed, impeding its ability to act with common policy and purpose. Europe's NATO members have not been meeting their funding commitments, falling short of NATO's 2% of GDP target, only allocating 1.6% of GDP to defense, compared to the United States.
Would you agree that the notion that Israel's genocide in Gaza has helped Russia geopolitically feels like they were massively isolated 2 years ago? I mean, massively isolated by the West, but not necessarily massively isolated at all if you consider all of the other countries that to varying degrees have been like pro-Russia or uninterested overall in Russia's actions that are unjustifiable in Ukraine. But yes, I do think that the attention shifted very quickly to Israel and defending Israel's offensive genocidal campaign in Gaza. And yes, it is another fucking gift to the Russian invasion. One, you make it even more politically costly to defend Ukraine, which, you know, it wasn't really about defending Ukraine ever. Let's be for fucking real. It's about weapons shipments and also, you know, selling the entirety of the Ukrainian economy at pennies on the dollar to Western interests. However, yes, it's a wonderful opportunity for Russian envoys to turn around and be like, you don't like what we're doing in Ukraine? Look at what you're doing. You're doing genocide. You're doing genocide in Gaza and you're defending it. Fuck you. It's great. That double standard line plays, that same hypocrisy baiting works really well even in the global stage like that. Yeah. Hypocrisy baiting.
States is 3.5%. This funding disparity leaves Europe's defense largely up to the US. Funding deficit.
The West didn't even do a good job of isolating Russia. Japan continued buying oil, and France and Spain are still buying gas from Russia. Yes, because at the end of the fucking day, obviously, Europe is not going to be like, yeah, we're going to starve and fucking allow our population to die in the cold. Yeah, no shit. All it did was basically, I think the guys that made out like a bandit from Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the political and economic isolation that Russia was supposed to withstand from the Western world with American-backed sanctions, the real fucking winners in that situation were Kazakhstan and like India, you know what I mean, which created secondary markets. They don't even see ads at the top of the hour, and now they're getting now they're basically filtering all of Russia's trade. It's wonderful for them, you know what I mean? Think about that. I mean, Kazakhstan, major Kazakhstan W, major India W overall. It's a phenomenal boon for their economy. But, you know, at least you can feel like you are a Kazakh chatter getting a W if you subscribe for $5 or for free. You know what I mean? Because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. Also, economic isolation from the West doesn't mean much anymore when Russia can simply turn to China. Yes, there's also that. Anyway, here's the 3-minute ad break now. You can also subscribe for free with a Twitch Prime, by the way.
Sits aside, the European Defense Agency characterizes European armed forces as boutique.
Russia has not been weakened militarily or economically by the proxy war. Meanwhile, Ukraine is destroyed. That's also an insane statement. I'm sorry, but the idea that Russia has not been weakened militarily or economically by the proxy war is fucking nuts. Okay? What the fuck are you talking about? Finland and Sweden joined NATO. That's a insane L for Russia. I talked about this briefly a couple nights prior when we were first talking about the Kharkiv offensive. That's crazy. That's a crazy statement. While Russia is doing better than the projections that they placed upon Russia's economy, that still doesn't change the reality that like they are definitely taking major fucking L's, both militarily and also economically in general. The real W would be to operate on similar boundaries to China and strengthen your relations, your trade relations with European nation states that obviously desperately need your energy instead of invading Ukraine. But that's a whole different story. This is insane. They've lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers and massively depleted their Soviet inheritance of armored vehicles, which will take decades to replace. Well, decades to replace, but also a lot of money for the Russian military contractors as well on that front. But yes, to say that like Russia hasn't taken an L in this is ridiculous, in my opinion. Especially when you have to look at the opportunity cost. You have to look at like what they could have done, and what they could have done is like I said, the Chinese modus operandi. Just kick back, let the West fall on its own, on the weight of its own contradictions. And they didn't do that. And they actually, in my opinion, gave a lot of life to Western imperialism and Western dominance, like one final big push for America, a major, major gift, in my opinion, to NATO generals, major gift. Russia has nationalized large parts of their military industrial complex and other parts of their economy due to this war, partially staving off huge problems. Yes. Putin and Zelensky just need to do a podcast with Bill Maher. Exactly. He would fix that shit.
Militaries, primarily due to their lack of standardization and interoperability. Analyses by Carnegie Europe reveal critical capability gaps, particularly in
the Russia-American dynamic is closely is not dissimilar to like the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, okay, in America. On the one hand, you got the Republican Party further and further pushing right, offering a gift to the Democratic Party by like being like, no, we will take away your civil liberties, right? Showing the American population like, oh no, if you want to get an abortion, we're going to kill you. And then the Democratic Party turns around and is like, no, you don't understand. Actually, we're still going to fucking beat up protesters, and we're still going to fucking fund and facilitate Israel and do all the shit that like Trump was doing, that you hated when Trump was doing it, that we ran against. And it's a similar dynamic. Russia gives a gift to the Western world, to NATO and to America in general by invading Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of people dead, millions displaced. Then America turns around and returns the favor by funding and facilitating Israel's genocide. And then they remind everyone like, yeah, Russians are the bad guys for sure in Ukraine, but like also don't forget, we are the bad guys, okay? We're the big bad. Okay? Time without over. I already ran the top of the hour break.
In air and ground forces. Outdated fighter jets and limited pilot training, as well as the lack of robust armored divisions, make large-scale ground operations highly ineffectual, if not outright impossible. All of this is exacerbated by crippling dependence on the United States, severely compromising Europe's autonomy. Europe's economy is similarly not in great shape. Eurozone GDP growth is only averaging 1.8% annually, which means it will struggle to compete in the long term with both the resurgent China and the declining US.
In there, what?
Despite this, the rich, as usual, have found a way to greatly increase their wealth, contributing to an acute rise in inequality. 1 in 5 adults in the EU are at risk of...
Did you talk about how NATO is contemplating sending military advisors or trainers to Ukraine? Oh, dude, that's remember Vietnam? Isn't it ironic that we were talking about how Ukraine will be Russia's Vietnam, only to turn around and turn it into our Vietnam? That's great. Another somber reminder that we won't learn from our very own lessons from not that long ago. Except this time it's like Vietnam with nukes. Both parties involved in the conflict have nukes.
Poverty or social exclusion. Even though much of Europe is seen by Americans as a socialist hellscape, the reality is that capitalism has gutted the moderate gains of social democratic policies, causing a spiral into poverty, with children most at risk, even in countries with robust safety nets. This is likely in part due to real wages being projected to continue to fall below pre-pandemic levels. This trend is exacerbated by the soaring energy prices we discussed earlier. In addition, there are regional disparities in economic performance, such as unemployment rates hitting 20% in Spain. These challenges can compound the obstacles people face, sometimes in unique ways, and they resist a one-size-fits-all liberal solution. Thanks to US meddling and decades of Western imperialism, the EU is currently seeing an influx of millions of refugees from conflict zones and unstable regions all over the world, including Syria, Afghanistan, and Ukraine. In 2023, asylum submissions rose by 18% compared to 2021, reaching 1.2 million applications, most of which came from Syria and Afghanistan. And that figure doesn't include the backlog of some 883,000 applications. Some say this is fitting, given that the EU and its overlord, the US, have destabilized many of these very regions and produced these refugees. In addition to those fleeing unlivable conditions, the EU received a whopping 5.1 million immigrants in 2022, a 117% increase from 2021. As a result, the EU has seen the rise of racist and violent right-wing movements in several member states, including Poland, Hungary, and Germany. These fascists trot out the same tired arguments framed with populist rhetoric about immigrants being a burden on the state, unable to culturally integrate, and taking jobs from citizens. Okay, so far, things look pretty grim for the EU, but there are silver linings. First and foremost are the EU's attempts to improve relations with China by making economic ties the cornerstone of the relationship. While daily trade exceeds 2.3 billion euros, the EU has a substantial trade deficit of 400 billion euros, highlighting the asymmetrical nature of the partnership. The EU is seeking to address this by working with China to allow more market access for EU businesses, and China is already taking steps to accommodate. European companies say they often encounter restrictions when entering certain sectors and struggle to compete with local firms, which is a little funny considering their love of the free market. Additionally, they're working on creating an agreement governing intellectual property.
This is so funny. America said the exact same thing yesterday. And I was with Jank in the car going to the commencement. And I was like, bro, who do you think said this? Joe Brandon or Donald Trump? Joe Brandon came out with a fucking statement on Twitter where it was like, China's cheating with their government subsidies, and that's why we're doing tariffs to make sure that nobody in America gets hurt by the cheating Chinese ever again. And it was like, bro, what do you mean they're cheating? Like they're cheating because of their subsidies? What the fuck? That's like our entire energy sector. And also on top of that, our entire agricultural production. That's insane. They stole IP through cyber terror? Yeah, okay. Trump doesn't get the basics. Wait, no, not this one. He thinks his tariffs are being paid by China. No, this isn't it. This isn't it. This is the old tweet. Any freshman econ student could tell you that the American people are paying his tariffs. The cashiers at Target see what's going on. They know more about economics than Trump. Hashtag Team Joe. That's from 2019. That's different. Man, this is the one I'm looking for. Thank you. For years, the Chinese government has cheated by pouring money into Chinese companies, which then dump cheap products onto the market, hurting competitors who play by the rules. I'm announcing that tariffs will ensure American workers are not held back by unfair trade practices. They're cheating. In the age of unimaginable inflation that is harming the average American, if you would like to get a $12,000 electric vehicle that's better than the ones that are readily available in the marketplace, well, fuck you then. You want a $12,000 EV? You're not getting it, bitch. Fuck you. You understand me? Subsidies are cheating. That's why we need tariffs, except for when I was running against Donald Trump, in which case I said no tariffs. You can't say Chinese like that, brother. I'm rewatching Deadwood right now, and it's fucking me up. Yep. Biden says that the difference is that these are narrowly targeted as opposed to Trump's. I disagree with the tariffs, but that's the argument. He's clearly doing it because it's popular in an election year. Okay, well. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, we can't even call Chinese products cheap anymore. They used to be, but now they can produce the absolute shittiest as well as the absolute finest products in the world. Yep. They don't want the day where all chatters on a shout.
You are looking at the Xiaomi SU7. This thing starts at $30,000 US, goes up to $41,500 US, and it comes with almost 800 kilometers of range, apparently. And Jacob, what's the...
That's impossible. I don't believe that. Wait, 800 kilometers of range? That's 400 miles. How are you complaining about the tariffs? Were you pro UAW? Listen, as far as the tariffs on Chinese products goes, okay, I'm in favor of hyper-focusing our efforts on not only subsidies in the United States, but also ensuring that those subsidies go to the hands of the workers rather than just simply feeding the bottom line of the shareholders, improving shareholder value. Okay, that's the major issue that I have with the way that we try to outcompete China. 500 miles, that's insane. I don't believe that. Chinese range ratings are totally made up. It's probably like 250 to 280 on the US metric. Yeah, there's that. I don't understand how that, how you can go for fucking 500 miles. There's no shot. Maybe no AC. Yeah, doubt it. Probably has a gas generator in it. 250 miles downhill on neutral. They can store gas and use it to create electricity, increasing the range to like 600. I read they have had production problems. There's a generator inside the car. They have gas generators in it. What is this? Okay. This car is immensely bad. 20% of all sold models of insurance claims already. Okay. Just got the best regen braking Lamau, but no, for real, gas generator to charge the batteries is so pog. The SU7 does not have a generator. It's full EV. They have had production problems, yes. Okay. This conversation is like falling apart because now we're talking specifically about Chinese EVs. Let's dial it back to the anti-competitive nature of the Chinese government and their subsidies.
Rights and their enforcement, as the EU has expressed concerns about China's approach and claims it hinders innovation and investment, something which is not reflected in the data, but nonetheless China has expressed willingness to discuss. Instead of banning apps and warmongering as the US would prefer,
what I would like from the Biden administration is what many people have suggested before me as well, which is that I have no issues with subsidies to American corporations, not at all. As a matter of fact, something that I always say is that I want America to be more like China, not on the repression of civil liberties or mass surveillance front, but instead on even development and rapid urbanization, and also a genuine focus on shifting our attention to renewable energy front, and maybe even foreign policy. Okay, greatly dialing back our violent militant nature in our foreign policy. Those are the things that I wish America would copy China on. Trains everywhere, for example. Now, having said that, I don't have an issue with subsidies at all. That's why I have talked at great length about like Elon Musk back in the day, telling you that I wanted him to be the perfect beacon for this kind of thing. Like he basically, he was set up to be a phenomenal champion for the correct kinds of subsidies. And yet he became this like right-wing shithead. Okay. Like what did he do? He focused his efforts on renewable energy, on EVs. And even if you listen to what he had to say before this, like, further and further right-wing slant into like becoming basically like an NFT hawker. The idea was the things that he claimed he was interested in doing was basically like, not what he actually did. Focus on what he said he was going to do was basically try to fucking modernize public transit, right? If you were to believe him. Even though the entire time he was just using that to position against existing public transit and existing development projects for public transit, while also being insanely anti-union. So, and failing along the way regardless. What I'm trying to say is, if the American government was like, we're going to give more subsidies to compete with China to our domestic manufacturers across the board, while simultaneously putting conditions on said subsidies, conditions like unionization, conditions like 51% approval in at the table with alongside the shareholders, okay? Focusing on even, I'll use liberal terminology for it, focusing on stakeholders rather than shareholders, right? A new way to do capitalism, things of that nature, putting conditions such as that on all of the new domestic manufacturing initiatives that were happening in this country would have been infinitely more beneficial. We didn't really do that, though.
The EU and China are seeking diplomatic solutions to these challenges, the most important being the negotiations for the Comprehensive Agreement on Investment, or CAI. This agreement aims to create a level playing field for businesses on both sides, strengthening intellectual property rights protection and enhancing transparency. Besides wisely seeking better relations with the world's soon-to-be second superpower, the EU is also, albeit slowly, attempting to claw itself out from...
What's the difference between a stakeholder and a shareholder? A stakeholder is every single person, including like the productive forces. Whereas a shareholder, it's a way to be like socialist adjacent without actually doing real socialism. Stakeholders are every single person, including those who are a part of the productive forces. Shareholders are simply those who own capital, those who own shares in the company. Stakeholders are people who are impacted by the decisions of the company. That is not even outside of the boundaries of capitalism, by the way. Like what I'm describing to you was something that under the Trump administration, a bunch of CEOs who saw the writing on the wall promoted. If you recall, there were people writing articles at the World Economic Forum and to the New York Times, like 250 CEOs signed a letter saying, we got to find a new way to do capitalism, to save capitalism. You know? Stakeholders also include people affected by the externalities. Yeah, like a renewed effort, a renewed focus shift on the environmental impact of your output, for example, things of that nature. Stakeholders, anyone who may be affected by a company's actions, negative or positive, such as consumers, competition, also including employees and those with ownership in an organization. Shareholders have monetary investments in the company. I've heard the term stakeholder is considered problematic. Wait, what? Dude, I don't fucking know what that is.
From under the weight of U.S. influence. Geopolitical tensions, notably Russia's war with Ukraine, have reinvigorated debates on Europe's autonomy and the role the US plays in perpetuating conflict and antagonizing other nations. The EU has begun to voice serious concerns about US reliability, one notable example being French President Emmanuel Macron, who has strongly advocated for reducing dependence on American arms and enhancing Europe's military capabilities. The US seems to be toying with a serious disengagement from Europe.
Yeah, stakeholders, just a way to obfuscate labor versus capital. Just finished business school, lol. Yes. And even that's a bridge too far is what I was trying to say. Because that's not stakeholder capitalism versus shareholder capitalism is still absolutely firmly placed within the boundaries of capitalism, which of course is a bourgeois-run economic structure that benefits capital owners regardless. Basically a whitewashing initiative of the same dynamic, the same contradictions that exist under capitalism. And yet even that is considered a bridge too far for many capitalists who have grown fat under the current way of existing. Under our current mechanisms of production, they benefit. They're so used to endless growth and the American government and the Western liberal capitalist nations constantly looking for new markets that they can exploit, constantly opening up new vectors of exploitation by way of imperialism and dominance and the unequal extraction that we engage in with the global South, that they're just like, no, we're not even doing that. Shut the fuck up. That's commie talk. Even though it's not. It is a way to try and preserve capitalism in the same way that welfare was seen as a reasonable middle ground when the USSR existed, in an effort to basically continue extending the lifeline of the capitalist mode of production. Welfare originally was fought hard for. Social safety nets were originally fought hard for by obviously communists, trade unionists, socialists alike, and it unironically gave capitalism an extension, an additional lifeline, so that it could not succumb under the weight of its own contradictions. And yet, given the interest of capital owners and their endless need for growth, and also given the reality that profit rates do tend to decline, people still, those who are in positions of power, capital owners, still very much advocate against their best interest. And instead of continuing capitalism, instead of trying to breathe life back into capitalism, they want to make things worse and worse until the structure collapses. And in that collapse, as things stand currently, because there is no counterbalance, no counterweight to capitalist forces, all we will see is fascism. That's where you're at now. Fascism is a way to maintain order as capitalism decays.
Driven by an enthusiastic pivot towards Asia as part of the Biden regime foreign policy strategy. The EU sees the writing on the wall and would be wise to
That's why you still got motherfuckers like this. Communism sucks. The only thing he's good at is starving a population under it. You shouldn't be a communist. I shouldn't. You're right. You know, I'm rich. I could very easily just drop everything and become a fucking capital owner and allow capital accumulation to happen. So you're right. I shouldn't be, but you, Persian soldier, you probably should. It's just pure self-interest for you. Think about that.
decouple itself from an increasingly unstable and violent United States. Episodes like this one are made possible thanks to our generous patrons.
Motherfuckers would be like, bro, communism is so bad. It means bread lines and no food, right? As the guy saying that is literally like one accident removed from fucking permanent medical debt, and also not being able to put food on the fucking table forever. Sick, man. Thank you. Communism embraces totalitarianism. Yeah, no, totally. You're absolutely correct on that. First of all, communism has never existed on the planet unless you're talking about primitive communism, you know, that far predates all other mechanisms of production that we have tried and have failed to keep alive. But the idea that like we've had communism and that communism embraces totalitarianism is laughable. I think you're talking about the socialist project of the Soviet states, which never arrived at communism at all. The goal is to evolve. Anyway. Communism and socialism seems good, but goes against human nature. Yes, thank you, dude. The elementary talking points that I've definitely never actually encountered before in my entire life as a champagne socialist myself, publicly so for the past, almost a decade. This right here, in the most debate bro terms, is the naturalistic argument. It's a fallacy. You're doing a logical fallacy. There's nothing natural about fucking skyscrapers, okay? There's nothing natural about getting in a fucking tin can and flying from New York City to Los Angeles in a span of 4 hours. All matter of human existence is literally dominating nature, okay? The fuck do you mean? The idea that like, oh, is simply, it simply goes against our nature is so silly. Yeah, I liked the guy who picked the username Persian Soldier to type on the internet, perhaps thousands of miles away, through a series of interconnected wires and fiber optic cables, only to, in real time, basically, get me thousands of miles away to read what he had to say with an account that he created today, by the way, with a sock account that he created today, that communism and socialism seems good, but is against human nature. What part of your existence is natural? Also, in debate bro terms, factually inaccurate. Humans are naturally social animals. The most social in history. Socialism and communal interest is literally in our nature more than any form of capital. Yes. It's like when people say war is a part of human nature. It's not. You say war is a part of human nature as you are living in one of the most collaborative periods in human history. Like, the fuck? Some domestic Israel news. There's an internal chasm that formed the war cabinet as Gallant publicly opposed Bibi's plan for a year-long military occupation in Gaza. Gantz, along with people outside the coalition, stand behind Gallant, while Bibi, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and much of Likud are now calling for his resignation. This little Bibi Gallant feud has gone on for a while now, but was mostly fought by leaking war cabinet statements to the press and shit. Now it's really blowing up. It is always the ones who aren't benefiting from a capitalist society that hate communism. Well, no, the people that hate socialism, not even communism, but like the people that hate Marxism for the most part, like the most avowed defenders of capitalism are obviously still the capital owners. They understand that the class war exists. They're winning. And when you're winning, you try to make everyone else who is losing in the class war feel like there is no class war at all. They shift your attention away to other things. And many people are willing participants in this narrative, and they become loyal soldiers to their bosses because they have this peasant brain, the peasant mentality. That's why they come in here and yell at me for being a socialist grifter, for example, thinking that they've owned me by saying that I am financially successful. This is not an own at all. Demanding that I take a position that they're used to. Know your place, sir. You are my master, they say. You are my master, and you should actually continue to advocate for my demise, as all of my masters have before you. If you were to do that and then tell me that I actually do have an opportunity for advancement, I would much more likely to be a willing participant in this conversation who loves you and adores you. Please stop telling me that the system is fucked up and designed against me. I do not like to hear that. I like to be sedated. I like to feel like I have the opportunity to dominate and be like you one day. All right. So, I was once a D fan. I would like to apologize that I ever hated you or listened to anything that piece of shit immoral human being ever said. Damn. Aggressive words, man. But listen, you and everyone else always is all on their own personal journey of learning. You know, I will not fault you for your prior positions. I will instead welcome you with open arms. Reform is possible. Rehabilitation is possible. That's why I do what I do. So hopefully that's not bait. But, you know, we're lucky to have you here. He didn't say human. He said human in air quotes. Okay. Slovakia. Talked about that. Let's get to Biden and Trump agreeing to participate in two, not one, but two presidential debates. Brother being like socialist, rich, hypocrite, scammer, then turn right around to tweet at Elon and hope that he boosts their crypto. Yeah.
Now to politics as promised, and President Biden and former President Donald Trump actually in agreement on something, and that is the dates for two presidential debates. Like so much of this election season, those debates will be happening way earlier than usual, something both candidates, they agree on that as well. Ed O'Keefe is at the White House for us. He's got the details. Ed, this was a surprise. Good morning.
Sure was, Tony. Good morning. But early voting begins in September in some states, and that's why both candidates wanted debates earlier. Trump has asked for...
This is correct. Just a reminder, that is exactly why Haas will talk to these D fans when they come in talking shit. Yeah. 100%.
Even more debates, but the president's campaign so far has signaled he's only planning...
You liking Islam is all I need to know about you. Islam ruined my country. One day, brother, the Shah will come back. I promise. And then you can join the Savak forces in doing the right thing. You know? Instead of the morality police, you can be a Shah police, okay? I promise. Inshallah, one day. Yeah, this dude is actually logging in from Westwood for sure. People saying I'm like pro-Islamist fundamentalist is the funniest thing. Because because in the same breath, once I start talking about like trans rights or whatever, they literally start talking about how they need to melt trans people. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know if that guy personally has that opinion, but it's pretty funny. Then like in most instances, people will literally do that. Hassan is an Islamist fundamentalist. Except for his opinion on, you know, queer rights, women's rights, numerous things that are in direct contradiction to any kind of fundamentalist opinion, whether it is an Islamist one or a Christian one, or even a Jewish fundamentalist one, I guess. The same people that are like, bro, you're an Islamist fundamentalist, are also, in many instances, the same people that say, you wear a dress, you are gay. Communism ruined my country, son, or Islam ruined my country, daughter? Ugh. I don't know. They're both terrible. When I first started following you, my husband said I shouldn't be a fan of you because you wanted to reinstate the caliphate. What the fuck? That's awesome.
Planning to do too.
Make my day, pal. I'll even do it twice.
2 presidential debates now on the calendar.
The Savak wasn't all bad. All lies from IR, which you guys are eating up. I love you, chatter. You're right. No, totally, man. Listen, bro. Listen, bro. My grandfather, when he was removing the nails from suspected dissidents, he was doing it for Iran. It was not that bad, bro. When he was actually removing tooth and black bagging, okay, with techniques he learned from the CIA, he was doing it for Iran, bro. I am Persian. Please, Joe Biden, glass Tehran. My people yearn for freedom.
In a public back and forth, President Biden and former President Donald Trump agreeing to debate on June 27th and September 10th.
Donald Trump lost 2 debates to me in 2020. And since then, he hadn't shown up for debate.
Biden's challenge to debate Trump comes as recent polls show the race stalled, especially in battleground states. But more concerning for the president, numbers show true weakness when voters are asked about how he's addressing the war in Gaza and the economy.
I'm here. I'm ready, willing, and able.
And the former president's used his brief appearances outside his criminal trial in Manhattan to repeatedly challenge Biden to debate. But he wants to go even bigger.
I think there should be more than 2, and I think they should be in large venues. It's just more exciting.
The first debate will be held in the battleground state of Georgia, but without an audience. And the other will be a primetime face-off held in a news studio instead of a debate stage.
I am pleased to welcome you to this first presidential debate.
This surprise arrangement likely spells the end of the Nonpartisan Commission on Presidential Debates, which has held them since 1988. And these joint appearances have a way of shaping perceptions about the candidates, thanks especially to how they're joked about later.
Governor Bush, strategery.
Yeah, that's a great instance where the proof that you are showing immediately destroys the argument that you're making, because that motherfucker became president. So all the memes about how stupid he is was completely inconsequential. Just saying.
Vice President Gore.
Lockbox. But the Commission's 2020 debates drew criticism from all sides for being especially chaotic and contentious.
Will you shut up, man?
Contentious as in Trump did almost execute Biden. Like, Trump did do an attempted assassination on Joe Biden, something that we forget about. He literally had COVID. He motherfucking had COVID, bro. He literally was, he was sick. And he went up on that stage against an 800-year-old corpse, just like coughing in his direction and shit, being like, hey, shake my hand. Come on. I mean, I'm exaggerating. I don't think he did that, but yeah, it failed.
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
unprecedented.
Ed, I really didn't think this was going to happen. So what was it that brought both candidates together to say,
Shake
yeah, we're
my
on board?
hand. Shake my hand, Brandon. If you're a real man, Joe Biden, you would shake my hand.
With a debate now.
Look, these guys both want to do this. They can't help themselves. The president eager to remind the country of the contrast between him and Donald Trump and motivate people.
ABC will allow simulcast, CNN won't. Bad form, CNN, very bad form. ABC will share the debate with other broadcast and streaming news networks to simulcast. CNN has said only that its debate will air on its own platforms. Classic. I just keep repeating that over and over again with the hopes that people will also fucking feel that same way. One day. If I keep saying it over and over again, more people will be on board with it. Someone's in a good mood. Yeah, I'll be honest, I like coming back home and streaming from home. I enjoy this, you know? I miss my dog. I miss my my structured, regimented lifestyle. You know what I mean? I'm addicted. Yeah, I mean, I love what I do. I'm very fortunate. Biden only looks like his mom says he looks good. And you know you're stoked about the debates? Oh, yeah, I am. You also said Mossadegh was Democratic. He was not. This show you know nothing about Iran. You're right. Mossadegh was a bad guy, dude. He really fucked up when the people of Iran consented. Mossadegh consented. But you know who didn't consent? British Petroleum. It's really fucked up when you don't actually take into care or consideration the profit margins of British Petroleum. I agree. I agree with you. You're right. It is the most anti-democratic thing you can do. Thank God. Thank God America got involved in Iran, right? Yeah, he made the law to make him dictator and also stop the election. Bro, you literally want the Shah to return. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You are literally defending a monarch. Hello? What are you saying? It's like, dude, Mossadegh was very, very unforgiving and very undemocratic. You do not know your history, which is why Iran must return the Shah to what? Oh, the monarchy, which is the greatest form of democracy that you can get to. Anyway, so I said some words that were very mean. Well, not really, but I said some stuff about this, and apparently liberals got very mad at me, and I didn't even realize because I don't have Twitter on my phone.
People inclined to vote for him.
But let's finish
by
this,
seeing
and
that
we'll cover that
contrast.
in a second.
The former president's been saying for months he'll debate anytime, anywhere. He also wants that contrast, hoping to reinforce perceptions about issues like the economy and take it directly to his opponent. And look, at a time when voters are saying either of these guys is too old to do the job, the other guy wants to show that they're quicker on their feet and will be able to withstand 4 more years. Tony.
All right, Ed, thank you very much.
Middle East next, and the Israel.
So before we get to the Israel stuff, I saw that this was going on, and I had a statement about it. I said, I, for one, am excited to watch 2 80-year-old men yap about a bunch of issues they almost completely align on with respect to policy while acting as though they're miles apart from one another. Aaron Rupar, liberalism's greatest soldier, actually hit me with a quote tweet and fucking hit me where it hurts. He said, Trump supports stripping bodily autonomy from women. Biden does not. Trump supports taking healthcare away from tens of millions of people. Biden does not. Trump wants to round up migrants and put them in detention camps. Biden does not. This part is a little bit, excuse me. What? That part's a little weird. Trump supports executing drug dealers. Biden does not. Trump wants to withdraw from NATO and form an alliance with Russia. Biden does not. I could go on. So what's really interesting about this take, okay, what's really, really, really interesting about this take, ultimately, is annoying ideology. If so, Rupar got that in spades. No. Some of the stuff that he's mentioning is just, you know, not even fair to bring up in this conversation, considering that It's ironic because there are aspects of the Biden administration that is demonstrably better. Fango Lives is correct. There are aspects of the Biden administration that is demonstrably better. It's ironic that he didn't mention them, though. Like, for example, not eviscerating federal agencies and actually utilizing them, which Biden has done. But these guys are so permanently warped in posturing against Trump brain. The problem with liberalism is that it is inherently reactionary. Maybe not as bad as like the actual Republican attitude, but overall liberalism is also inherently reactionary as an ideology, which is precisely the reason why they always talk about the boundaries of what they are not, what they are up against. But slowly but surely, it literally, the things that you can say you are advocating for, the things that you are saying that you should be voting for Biden for get smaller and smaller and smaller in that time frame. He didn't even mention any of the fucking good things that Biden has done. Things that I will readily admit and routinely talk about. Okay? In my tweet, I singled out immigration, Israel, Palestine, and tariffs. Those are the three key issues that Biden is 100% aligned with Trump on. Okay? And then I also mentioned one aspect that he's not aligned with Trump on, which is his most important key difference between him and Trump. Now, problem here is liberals don't even fucking know how to advocate for the Democratic Party correctly. Liberals also don't personally understand how politics is supposed to work. Okay? Liberals only operate on lesser evil voting. People do not care about lesser evil voting. Okay? People do not think critically on many issues, and they especially don't think critically on lesser evil voting. If you consistently advocate on just how not as bad as the Republicans you are going to whittle away all of the people that would readily vote for you. Keith Olberbitch not only replied to you, but he also quote tweeted and wrote the same thing again with a bunch of spelling errors because he was so horned up. I mean, didn't we do that last election? Yes, we did do that last election. And notice something I have personally stated, okay, time and time again, was, this is him, by the way. Wait, that's what Aaron looks like? Oh my God. Okay. Something that I mentioned time and time again is a key principle in why people vote a certain way. Okay. Democrats have completely lost touch with the reality that you are supposed to offer something to people. Okay. Not just simply engage in a defensive posture. You have to offer them something, and then you have to prove to the people that voted for you that it was a good idea to vote for you. Engaging in pure team sports to say like, no, it's better if it's a D instead of an R that's doing the same exact initiatives, then, you know, it feels like your team won and then you can own the fucking conservatives, is not going to be good enough to actually win elections consistently. The Democratic Party's platform that they advocate for across the board, if we look at it holistically, is still significantly better than the Republican Party's platform. The issue is that the Democratic Party rarely ever follows through on their agenda, consistently loses and says, oh, well, it's because of the structural hurdles that were placed in front of us, a thing that no Republican has ever stopped themselves from advocating for, to a detriment, mind you, because Republican politics and Republican policy are both, I mean, Republican politics is good, but their policies are bad, right? And the Democratic Party's policies are supposed to be good, but their politics are supposed to be bad. Republicans never fucking say, oh man, like Mitch McConnell never goes, oh dude, we have structural hurdles. That's why we can't allow Obama to appoint a Supreme Court justice. That's not something that stops them. Okay. They do their bidding for their most loyal constituencies. All right. They do it sometimes to a detriment to the continuation of the party. What is this, bro? I swear every take you have is wrong. You say Israel's an apartheid state. That is completely wrong. I live in Israel and it is no apartheid. Only apartheid in the Middle East is in Arab countries and Iran with gender apartheid. I love you, chatter. Thank you for that take. That was brilliant. Yes, you're right. Every human rights group is wrong. You are right. How is this argument lesser evil voting? It's not only lesser evil voting when the counterpart pundit is diametrically opposed to the other. Considering I'm being charitable to him and seeing his post about policy. What? I'm going to get to it. Hold on. Let's continue. So, yeah, the Shaw Dick Rider has moved away from the monarch, who also doesn't have exactly favorable opinions on women, mind you, to saying that as a Persian soldier living in Israel, all of the human rights groups that say that, that accurately assess Israel's apartheid regime as anything but an apartheid, as just an apartheid regime, they're all wrong, actually. Anyway, so moving away from that idiotic talking point that I've addressed a million times over, let's get back to the point of contention here, okay? So the Democratic Party is supposed to say, look, if you vote for us, we are not as bad as the Republican Party. We will scale back on the Republican Party's death and destruction. We will scale back on the deregulation. We will scale back on the environmental impact, the damaging impact on the environment as a consequence of deregulation and many other things. We will defend labor rights. We will defend workers. We will create better economic opportunities, upward social mobility for some of the some of the least wealthy Americans, some of the poorest Americans, all that good stuff. We will protect immigrants. We will protect marginalized people, whether they're trans, black, brown, whatever, and also women's rights. We will protect women's reproductive rights specifically. Okay? These are the things broadly that the Democratic Party is advocating for as they position themselves as not the Republican Party. The Republican Party is advocating for the opposite things, right? However, back in the day, the idea was that if you voted for a Democrat, at least they would never champion the Republican Party's position on these issues, right? Nowadays, the Democratic Party doesn't even do the lip service. They just say, fuck you, vote for us, and that's it. And in that time frame, in that process, the things that they can point to get smaller and smaller and smaller as the daylight between the two parties and their policies actually reduce. In 2020, you could say, and the Democratic Party did say, that all of the brutalization that you're seeing from the police against free press, all the brutalization that you're seeing from the police, Trump's police, against protesters, we will never do that. That was a lie, as you can see clearly with what's going on with the pro-Palestinian demonstrations all around college campuses all around the United States of America. They're beating the shit out of students. They're beating the shit out of teachers. They're beating the shit out of even the press. Another thing that the Biden administration said was, we are not going to be like the Trump administration with their child separation policy and their immigrant detentions. We are going to be, America is a nation founded on immigration. We are all descendants of immigrants. We are a wonderful nation. We could take care of all these people. We are going to do our very best to reverse Trump's policies on immigration. The Biden administration, on the other hand, literally continued Title 42. The Trump administration's only policy in combating COVID was Title 42, saying that the CDC thinks that these migrants might have COVID, and therefore they can't come into the country in an effort to protect Americans from COVID, while simultaneously denying COVID was real anyway. The Brandon administration continued that policy. The Brandon administration continued immigrant detention. The Brandon administration also, 4 years after, it ran a successful campaign, mind you, against the Trump administration, saying that they were going to reverse in the first 100 days all of the Trump administration's immigration policies, turned around and advocated for the exact same bill that the Trump administration was trying to pass over and over again. Funding the border wall, funding Customs and Border Patrol and beefing up border security, assuming that the right-wing framing on the issue of immigration was actually not one of false economic, immigration has always been an economic issue. Still, falsehoods are presented in the conversation on the Republican front, and the Democrats are supposed to tackle it from the economic front and be like, no, they're not actually taking your jobs, yada, 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 right? But they dropped that completely and took on the right-wing framing on the border. They took on the framing that the Republicans were advancing, saying that, no, immigration is actually a matter of national security. Immigrants are violent. Immigrants are rapists. Immigrants are thieves. And what ended up happening is basically the same exact thing that you see all around the world. You see in Europe especially, right? That people are now more militant against immigrants than ever before. And the reason for that is because the Democratic Party has also given up on arguing on the real boundaries of this issue and arguing for real solutions to this problem. A problem that is born out of right-wing, white nativist, anti-immigrant sentiments. Okay? I am not a violent rapist, thief, says Iraqi Mo. Daddy Pie says, I think immigrants are terrible. Okay? Great. I love having a diversity of opinion in the chat. Meanwhile, regardless of the diversity of opinion, both of you guys are going to see the top of the hour ad break because neither of you are subscribed for $5 or for free. That's right. If you no longer want to see those ads, immigrant, naturalized citizen, natural born U.S. citizen, doesn't matter. You still need to subscribe for $5 or for free. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. Greg Abbott pardons Daniel Perry, the man who mowed down BLM protesters and clearly premeditated it. Yeah, we'll get to that as well. It's at least shocking white supremacist action taken by that fucking piece of shit. My point is, if you keep capitulating the right-wing framing on issues, you're going to lose that issue completely. Because why the fuck would people believe you now that you've had an attitude shift? When there are people that have been on the immigrants or rapists side with clarity, with moral clarity, for quite some time. All you've now done is say, no, they're actually right. I'm handing it to the right wing. They're correct. I'm the one who'll fix it, but the right won't let me fix it by being right wing. It is an idiotic bargain that is both bad policy and also even worse politics. Okay? It's something that, in my opinion, is completely unconscionable and also furthering the fascist agenda in this country. It is genuinely devastating. It is genuinely scary. And I cannot comprehend how any liberal doesn't see that fucking reality, the writing on the wall. Okay? No DMs today? What DM? What are you talking about? Anyway. Dems are bringing the border bill back to the forefront. That's great. Chris Murphy. In Twitter? What? That's weird. Today I'm reintroducing the bipartisan border security bill. It's not a bipartisan bill. It is a right-wing bill, by the way. It's only bipartisan because it's a right-wing bill that the Democrats are pushing for. It's insane to me that they're doing this again. Basketball analogy. If you're given the option between Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, two players who overlap greatly, everyone's picking MJ. If you're racist, you want the MJ of racism law. No, it's like having the option. Let's say you're like a chess grandmaster, okay? It's like being a chess grandmaster and saying, I want to fucking play against LeBron in a dunk competition. It's like, what are you doing? You're going to get owned. You know what I mean? There's no reason to go to a dunk competition. LeBron is going to destroy you. Play chess. Bad analogy? I don't think so. So, it is very frustrating to see the Democratic Party do this over and over again, and only to have these fucking idiotic people defend this silly notion. People do not vote on lesser evil voting boundaries. It is stupid, okay? And the expectation that, like, you are owed their vote as the Democratic Party is also stupid. The expectation that you are owed their vote and not vice versa is inherently undemocratic. Why the fuck do we have a democracy then? You have to fall in line and offer fealty to the Lord, to one lordship over the other? Okay, well, why do we have a democracy then? No, you're supposed to fucking earn our vote, man. Anyway, what the fuck did Keith Olbermann say? He has some takes on it as well, I heard. I saw earlier, but I have to pee. And tax policy, and union support, and climate investment, and agency regulations, and judicial picks, and protections for trans people, and DACA protections, and marijuana policy, and student loan forgiveness, and overtime regulations, cabinet picks, and renewable interest. Exactly. That's why they voted in the first place. If you act out of line, you should be instantly ousted. Like, I don't even personally disagree with Hutch Hutchinson on this issue, on some, right? A lot of this is just like a laundry list of things that he wishes the Democratic Party was doing, but there are some that the Democratic Party is like genuinely taking the initiative on, right? Union protections being one of them. It's true. You're wrong if you don't think that the NLRB is not doing a good job. However, the issue here is still the idea that people are supposed to come to these conclusions on their own when the Democratic Party is not showing them that they're doing that. Okay? Even if the Joe Biden administration was legitimately making great initiatives on half of the things that he's talking about here, which, you know, half of them are not real, okay? It is wild to me that they are doing such a bad job with their messaging. They have had zero fucking policy papers on their website, on their campaign website. And I don't even know if they've changed that reality. Like a couple months back, they still had no policies on their website. Now, obviously, many people are not going to go there and read that anyway. It's not going to move the needle. But it's good for people like Hutch and all those other people who want to dick ride the Democratic Party into oblivion to have the talking points. And the fact that they are not even offering talking points to their own fucking loyal Fedayeen is insane to me. It shows me that they are not interested in winning. Hutch is the perfect liberal, though. He claps for incrementalism, where the next Republican will easily undo all this and undo even more. The ratchet effect is because everyone is a liberal. True progress takes a lot of fucking time to undo. Think abortion, it took decades. Yes. True progress and true regress, even though regress is easier than progress. The only thing that we do, thank you for the shout out on Wired, by the way, means a lot. The only thing that we do in this circumstance, is just like allow the Republicans to be more and more right wing, as we also become more and more right wing, because we've created an environment where like right wing sentiment is the only thing that people hear, and that kind of attitude is completely normalized. It is crazy, by the way. The latest New York Times Siena poll showed that Biden is doing horrifyingly bad. Like losing a fucking 12-point lead in Nevada, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, all these states where he's supposed to be dominating, with the exception of Wisconsin, is crazy. It's just so incredibly cooked. And so many of the Democratic Party loyal demographics are literally just not voting for Trump. Just not voting for Biden. Latino voters, like all of those states that we're looking at, Latino voters, okay, a key constituency. The states that we're looking at where young voters are an important constituency, even though they don't vote in like massive numbers, it's still an important constituency for the winning constituency that the Democratic Party has to create in order to defeat the Republicans. Biden is basically running on Trump is worse aesthetically and worse for democracy. Okay. This is insane, right? Hassan the Hun. One of them will put you in a camp if he says you're Muslim or here illegally, or latter if you don't speak English or you don't support our religion or you're gay and an intellectual and the other won't. But you do your glibness. At least you won't have to worry about the intellectual part. Great own, man. This is a real banger. 300 likes. Seems a little excited at the prospect of me going to jail here. It doesn't seem like you have an issue with that at all. Help your Californian child bride. Please look and shut me up. 23,588 California, mostly tribe lives. You, what the fuck? You have a platform. Help your state. Is this because we talked about how California, in comparison to other countries, have way less child brides? Is that what it is? Is that what's going on? I have to pee. Anyway. They've been spamming it for days. Did you watch MSNBC get mad at the New York Times poll? Oh, okay. Let's watch this.
Trial. There is new polling that finds for the first time the majority of Americans believe the former president is guilty. In the latest Yahoo News YouGov national poll, 52% of adults say Trump did indeed falsify business records to conceal hush money payments to a porn star. That is up 4 points from last month and up 7 points from when the charges were filed last year. If convicted, 51% would approve of Trump serving prison time, while 36% would be against putting him behind bars.
Willie, look at that. 51% would support Donald Trump. So I guess this isn't a far left-wing conspiracy.
No, that's a majority of Americans.
Yeah, that would be. Wait, again, I went to Alabama. 51. That's a majority.
Yeah,
right.
Once you get to 51.
Yes.
Okay.
Joyce confirms.
Okay.
As
Fantastic.
for the political ramifications, the poll shows Trump and President Joe Biden tied at 45% in this year's election among registered voters. But when asked who they would support if convicted, if Trump is convicted
that's not close.
in the hush money case, Biden takes a 7-point lead, 46 to 39%. So can I look at some other polling?
Yeah,
now?
why not?
The latest Morning Consult tracking poll over 10,000 registered voters finds 44% for Trump and 43% for Biden. That's within the poll's margin of error.
It's not 12 points. It's a tie. Okay.
And separate new polling of registered voters finds President Joe Biden leading Donald Trump in this survey from the New York Times and Ipsos. Biden is up 4 points, 47 to 43%. We should note, though, that the margin of error is plus or minus 6% for the poll.
So I get to say it's fascinating, Willie, and we'll get into this.
Mm-hmm.
The New York Times ran a few polls. They ran the New York Times Siena poll, which they roll off. It's a series, 15, 16, 17 stories that make people run around Manhattan with their hair on fire and Washington with their hair on fire. At the same, put this New York Times Ipsos poll.
The Ipsos.
Put it back. Okay. Run at the same time by the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
Biden's ahead by 4 points nationally. 4 points nationally. Not even an article about it. Anyway.
As for that New York Times Philadelphia Inquirer Siena College polling of 6 key battleground states that came out Monday morning, there was a lot of reaction to that. As we know, some of the most trusted pollsters in the country are calling into question the methodology and results.
You think?
The CEO of the Nevada Independent, John Ralston, calls Trump having a 13-point lead in the state, quote, bizarre, adding that nothing remotely similar has been seen in the state in decades. The founder of UVA's Center for Politics, Larry Sabato, says he laughed after seeing the Nevada numbers and recommends others do the same. National political reporter at The Bulwark, Mark Caputo, also calls the Nevada poll, quote, a total outlier. Meanwhile, the director of polling at Harvard's Institute of Politics, John Della Volpe, is raising questions about how Biden could be losing the youth vote.
They're doing 2016 again. It's the only method that they have. It's the only thing they know how to do. It relies on the understanding that the Democratic Party is entitled to your vote. Okay, you have to vote for them. They are entitled to your vote. It is inherently undemocratic. And it is pretty fucking crazy. It's not just public spin. Biden doesn't believe his bad poll numbers, nor do many of his top aides. Bro, this is literally Trump. Trump did these exact same shit. Per Dems who has spoken privately with the president and his team. This informs the largely steady as she goes campaign strategy. Some Democrats think the Biden team, by the way, this is Alex Thompson, the national political correspondent at Axios. Okay? So I'm not just reading a random fucking Twitter thread for those of you who get hyper focused on the aesthetics. I'm talking about a journalist breaking his own story on Twitter. Democrats think the Biden team is in denial about the polling and sleepwalking into defeat. The Biden team is convinced the country will not reelect Trump once they face the choice in November. Ultimately, voters will decide which side is right. In public and private, Biden has been telling anyone who will listen that he's gaining ground and is probably up on Donald Trump in their rematch from 2020. While the press doesn't write about it, the momentum is clear in our favor, with the polls moving towards us and away from Trump, Biden told donors during a West Coast swing last week. Reality check, some national polls have shown Biden ahead or tied with Trump, and in several other polls, the president is within the survey's margins for error. Many aspects of Trump's candidacy, including his legal battles, are unprecedented and add more mystery to the election projections. That's why when people say Biden has been under 40% for 8 months straight, no president has ever won the election after registering under 40% approval in an election year, according to 538's approval average. But these are unprecedented times because no incumbent president has ever run against a former president that is in legal trouble for the horrifyingly bad, corrupt, awful job that he did in the past 4 years that he was president in. So that's the reason why it's not as black and white as you think it is. It is unprecedented. But my point is, you shouldn't fucking have to rely on that if you're the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is doing fairly well across the board, with the exception for Biden. Can you imagine a world in which like the Democratic Party wins the Senate and the House, but lose the presidency? Because it would be ridiculous. But, you know, we're kind of staring at a reality like that right now. Unless we get even more fucking Democrats to lose their goddamn seats due to corruption investigations. It is ridiculous. The one thing that unseats some of the worst, most right-wing Democrats in this fucking country is their endless thirst for gold bullions from the Egyptian government or securing side deals with the Azerbaijan government. It's fucking freakish the way we are operating in the Democratic Party. It's like comical. Or if you're Eric Adams, Turkey. Remember how GE polls were the reason we had the vote for Biden because he had an average of 1% more popular vote lead than Bernie? Now polls don't matter at all. Yes. Insane splits here. In 2024, presidential elections were held today. Who would you vote for if the candidates were Joe Biden and Donald Trump? Wisconsin, 47% Joe Biden, 45% Trump. Pennsylvania, 47% Trump. Arizona, 49% Trump, 42 Biden. Michigan, 49% Trump, 42 Biden. Georgia, 49% Trump, 39 Biden. Nevada, 50% Trump, 38% Biden. It's so crazy to think that 4 years prior, I think if I'm not mistaken, Biden literally had a 12-point lead in Nevada, no? The New York Times Philadelphia Inquirer Siena College poll April 28th to May 9th. If this general election for U.S. Senate were held today, which candidate would you be more likely to vote for? Jackie Rosen, 40%. Arizona, 45%. Ruben Gallego. Bob Casey, 46%. Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, 49%. This is precisely what I'm talking about when I say the Democratic Party is doing literally unimaginably good in comparison to the fucking awful performance demonstrated by the top of the ticket. They're doing this in spite of the top of the ticket, mind you. Think about how crazy that is. How does nobody recognize that this spells doom for how personally unpopular the president is? Is Biden cooking or getting cooked? What do you think? Biden is losing in every state that was polled right now, and every single senator in that state is winning. Every single Democratic senator is winning. Every single, in all of those states, with the exception of one, Biden is losing by massive margins, too. Oh. New Times Siena poll. Voters picked Trump over Biden in handling the Israel-Gaza-Hamas thicket by a wide margin, as observed below. The number of Biden voters abandoning him from the left is a fly speck. Voters punish treachery. This is not just Israel, it's Abbey Gate. Split A, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. 50% say Donald Trump would be better. Do you want to know why? Because Donald Trump is at least consistently bad on Israel from our perspective. Joe Biden, on the other hand, with his like fucking weird, like, oh, well, Israel has a right to defend itself and we're going to fucking bear hug them, while simultaneously like, oh, we have to do the right thing and like maybe dial it back a little bit, is losing everyone. The other reason is, of course, because, what is this? Hold on. The other reason is because Donald Trump is not the president. Okay? People are stupid as fuck. People are stupid as fuck. They don't think about these issues deeply. They literally go, well, Biden is the one doing genocide. Maybe Trump will be different. I can yell about that every fucking day of the week and how wrong that is, but that's not going to move the needle. What will move the needle, however, is Biden taking a fucking strong stance in the right direction. That's the issue. Instead, he's doing the worst of both worlds. He's flip-flopping on it, and more importantly, showing everyone his major weakness, which is that he's old and demented and falling asleep on the wheel. This is precisely what I said on the Wired podcast as well. I don't know if it made the cut. It's really fucking bad. It's really, really, really bad. Oh. What? Counterpoint?
I don't believe the polls.
There you go. As poll shows, approval rating is at 33%. Joe Biden says, I don't believe the polls. So frustrating, dude. Trump would bomb Gaza way harder. Honestly, yes, Donald Trump is obviously more responsible, I would say, for October 7 than Joe Brandon is. Okay? Even though October 7 happened while Joe Brandon was the president, Donald Trump's actions are the major the major turning point for why October 7 happened. Okay? I've talked about this in detail a million times over. Having said that, however, how so? Oh my God, there's always new people that are like, what do you mean? The Abraham Accords that wrote out Palestinian statehood completely and just basically brought to the forefront normalization agreements that were already long-standing amongst Gulf states and Israel, and made it a legally binding agreement for everyone to fucking see without offering any assurances to the Palestinians, was genuinely a devastating move for Israel and for everyone else. Okay? That's number one. Number two, he moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and he did that and basically capitulated to the Zionist interest in that regard by saying like, no, Jerusalem, occupied territory, holiest, one of the holiest fucking lands for Muslims, Christians, and Jews alike. That's actually Israeli now. Okay, symbolically claiming that all of occupied Jerusalem is now Israel territory. Ridiculous move, greatly increasing tensions. Permanently recognizing the annexed territory of Golan Heights, which is Syrian territory that Israel illegally occupies and annexes. That's another fucking awful move from the Trump administration. assassinating Qasem Soleimani at the behest of Israeli interests for the most part, greatly increasing tensions against Iran. That's another bad fucking move. Throwing the Iranian denuclearization agreement, casting it aside, and implementing additional sanctions on Iran, even though Iran continued to follow the Iranian denuclearization agreement after Trump cast it aside. Another fucking major L in increasing tensions in the region. These are all things that the Trump administration did. My expectation from the Biden administration was to go back and fix that shit, which they did not do. So Biden is also responsible for October 7. Biden is responsible for October 7 for not going back on the Trump administration's policies. Okay? And then post October 7, it's all Biden at this point. Biden is funding and facilitating Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign. Biden did the bear hug. It wasn't Trump. Biden is the one who's been saying, you know, go ahead. Biden's administration is the one that's like vetoing any sort of criticism against Israel. And now, months later, 35,000 killed by Israel. And only now there was a brief moment where the Biden administration said, all right, we're going to fucking restrict some weapons, while simultaneously saying, oh, well, we conducted an investigation and saw that Israel may be potentially violating human rights with the arms that we're sending in directly against American law, in violation of U.S. law, that no weapons that America ships to allies could be used in violation of human rights. All that good stuff. Still offering Israel political cover, still defending Israel, but marginally criticizing Israel, which is now pissing off the pro-Israel crowd too. Massive shit show. Unimaginable shit show. That's how you got to this point, where people literally think, well, because Joe Biden is the president right now, and all the awful things that are happening, because like I said, most people are not very intelligent in the way that they analyze politics or make these decisions. So you have to really hammer the points and demonstrate messaging discipline and have an easy to understand narrative that you portray, which the Brandon camp is absolutely failing on. Terrorists using UN cars as cover, super cringe. Lol, what? Terrorists cope? Yeah, dude, they were. You're right. My land, bitch. Lol, terrorists cope so strong now. My land. That moment when you cope so hard about terrorists doing exactly what they said they want to do forever, lol. Any 58-year-old white dem was smashed right now. Lol, team terrorist cope. He's a clown, bro. I love the guy who fucking hates Biden, but also loves how rabid of a Zionist Biden is. Like, that's it. This is the guy who's not voting for Biden, dude. Okay? There are many like him who are fucking ultra Zionist, but still fucking despise Biden. These are the guys he's trying to maintain on his side. Good luck to him. Saying everyone is a terrorist. Terrorists are using UN cars. That's the actual cope, dumbass. You're the one who fucking believes in any and every falsehood that the Israeli government puts forward, even though they lie all the fucking time and are caught with their pants down all the fucking time. But you don't give a shit about the truth. You just want a neat little narrative that allows you to continue offering unconditional support to the state of Israel. It's ridiculous.
Damn, this guy's good.